Hello today, folks. Thanks for joining us. Over the next little bit, you'll get a chance to meet some of the authors that we love from the alternate and historical fiction track. You'll get a chance to listen as our authors have a cozy chat with you. They'll talk about anything and everything top of mind, from what they're currently working on to what they have coming in the near future. So grab a cup of tea and a snack, sit back and enjoy.
So, hey, my name is J. Hartley. I am a Shakespeare professor at the University of North Carolina in Charlotte, and I'm a novelist. I have just published my 24th novel. I write mostly sci-fi, fantasy, mystery, thriller. I'm kind of all over the place. I always have been. I am an agent's nightmare. And so I work in multiple genres and for multiple different age groups. Some of my stuff is for kids, some of my stuff is YA, and some of it is adult. I write also with Tom DeLonge, who some of you may know as the original lead singer of Blink-182 and Angels and Airwaves, and we do a kind of a series of X-Files-y kind of books called Secret Machines, which have just been optioned for television. So there's lots of interesting stuff going on at the moment. I just got back from a couple of weeks in Italy, and I'm also in the process of promoting the book, which you can see hopefully over my shoulder, if I can point in the right direction. Yes, there it is. It's called Burning Shakespeare. And this is one of those books that brings together my academic background and my love of fiction and creative writing, which is relatively rare for me. But it's a sort of comic, fantasy, time travel-y adventure story, which people have compared to Terry Pratchett and Neil Gaiman, among other things. And the premise of the story, fairly simply, is that a guy who really hates Shakespeare, set in the present, guy who really hates Shakespeare, sells his soul to the devil so that he can go back in time and wipe Shakespeare from history. And the devil he's working with is Belial, and they set up a portal in the early 1590s through a performance of Christopher Marlowe's Dr. Faustus, which allows this guy, Robert Bliss, and Belial to enter the 16th century and go about wiping Shakespeare from history. Now, that's where the story begins. In order, of course, you know, when you have demonic activity, then angels have to then involve themselves in thwarting said demonic activity. So in this case, an angel whose name, for reasons passing human understanding, is Gladys, puts together a team of humans recently dead, all killed in the same train accident in 21st century Boston, to go back in time and try to fix what the devil is doing. Now, you know, these are 21st century subjects, and some of them are not entirely convinced that the present is better off with Shakespeare in it. But they agree to do it because the premise of their mission is that if they are successful, then they get their lives back, and they can return to the present, avoid the train crash, and get on with whatever their existence has in store. So this is the premise of the story. It's fun, you know. It's a romp. It's an adventure, but it also draws on fairly serious questions about the purpose of art and the way that art evolves over time, and whether the things that we once valued continue to be valuable to subsequent periods, and at what point we have to sort of reassess whether the world is better off with, you know, Merchant of Venice and Othello in it or not. And as I say, you know, this draws on my experience as an academic. I've been, you know, a Shakespeare professor for almost 30 years at this point. I'm a performance person primarily, performance history and performance theory. I'm a director and dramaturg, and so this, you know, is a book that draws on all those kind of things, and these sort of it's basically a book I've been writing for the last 25 years. Actually, literally, that's true. I've rewritten it several times. I've rethought it, and it just came out in April from Falstaff Books. It is eligible for a Dragon Award, so if you read it and like it, you should consider nominating it, along with all the other cool stuff that's up for nomination. What else am I working on at the moment? As I say, I'm primarily a novelist, but I have had a long-standing interest in Japanese music and culture. I used to live in Japan. My family are Japanese. I'm obviously not, but my wife and son are. And I have a YouTube channel. I'll include the link somewhere, which does a lot of consideration of Japanese culture and Japanese music, particularly rock bands like Baby Metal, Polka Dot Stingray, Atarashi Gakko, the Oral Cigarettes, and a number of other Japanese rock bands. And through my channel, I talk about them. I do sort of lyrical breakdowns and discussions and things like that. And I mention it because the book that I'm working on right now, which is on submission right now, is connected to Japanese folk culture, though it's set in North Carolina, which is where I live, and it's about a family who have Japanese ancestry on one side, and the children are sort of put in a situation where they have to reconnect with sort of ancestral mystical abilities, powers, in order to protect themselves and their world from a kind of incursion from monsters and supernatural forces out of Japanese folklore, which are showing up in rural North Carolina. And again, it's a sort of a semi-playful, but an adventure with sort of serious concerns at the heart of it. So this is the thing that I'm working on at the moment. I'm also about to be working on a thriller, which is connected to the Italy trip that I just took, in mostly in Florence and Venice. And before that, I've published a lot of other things. My most recent work includes, as I said, the stuff that I'm doing with Tom DeLonge, The Secret Machines and Cathedrals of Glass books, which are science fiction. And also, my last book was called Impervious, which was a fantasy novel, a YA fantasy novel, that's set in a high school in which it's a tricky book to talk about, but it involves a girl who is given a sword pendant, which gives her abilities and turns her into a kind of Buffy the Vampire Slayer-esque superhero. But in the course of the story, as she's encountering various sort of fantasy creatures and forces, we start to realize that there's something odd about the story itself, that the fantasy elements may not actually be real, and she's actually in the process of living through a real life traumatic event, and the fantasy elements of the story are actually a kind of fictional creation of her own mind, which are enabling her to try to process the real life horror of what she's going through. And that is a book that I wrote living through a school shooting on campus a few years ago. So that's one of the things that that book came out 2 years ago now. But it's the most recent thing that I did before burning Shakespeare. What else? I am currently working on a new edition of Julius Caesar, which is, I've become the poster child for that particular play. So I'm doing the Auden fourth series edition of that play, which is going to be a kind of reconstruction of the original performance text of 1599 based on the folio. Nobody who doesn't know anything or care about Shakespeare is going to be interested in this, so I'm not going to say anything else about it. But this is all part of my my academic life and world. And I think that's probably about all I have to say.
I'm Bernadette Johnson. I'm a writer. I write vast swath of things, but my most recent book that's out in stores and isn't just on Amazon is The Big Book of Spy Trivia, which is pretty cool. I loved working on this one, and I still love reading about spy stuff. I also, I'm just jumping right into the stuff I have out because then I can ramble after that. I did a short story, another spy story, but a fiction story for Bobby's Snow universe, and it's actually out in a 3-story collection right now with another story by Bobby and by Charles Milhouse called, it's Snow Shorts Volume 3. Mine is about Elizabeth Walker. She's a Snow's former spy handler. So I just did one that was all about a spy handler and something she had to deal with back in the office, the offices of Mother, the fake spy agency. Well, it's not fake in the book, but and another thing I had out that's like this. So this one I think is Amazon only, but you can order hard copies and Kindle versions, and you can read it for free on Kindle, or you can read the stories themselves for free on Kindle Unlimited. And I also did, last year, I did a story in Castle of Horror anthology, Volume 6, Femme Fatales, which I'm actually fairly proud of because it was like, I kind of did a cozy mystery, but not so cozy because it's horrific, everything that's happening in it, but but it's got the setup of a cozy mystery. And I'm also working on a cozy mystery with Bobby. It's already written, it's just in second draft now, like it'll take a while. First draft's done, and I'm working on, I do have another book coming out soon. It's I feel weird, I'm in the alt history track, but this one does have some tangentially history related stuff. I have a book coming out in the spring called The Big Book of Horse Trivia for Kids, but I got to put in a lot of history stuff there too, so it was kind of cool. And before this is all done, I want to tell you the favorite thing I learned during that. But you see, now I'm like in the rambling stage of like, what do I talk about now? And I'm also working on another book about cryptids, which are like, Loch Ness Monster, Bigfoot type monsters, but I don't know how much I can say about that one because that's coming out like late next year, I think. I guess I need to talk to my publisher and say, how much can I say at DragonCon? But other than that, I'm trying to think. All the new stuff has probably been pushed out of my head by the other 2 books. But I still have the old stuff sort of bouncing around in there. I plan to reread my book before DragonCon and finish a couple of the other spy books I'm reading right now. I have a few that I ordered a bunch that I didn't even get around to reading when I was researching the spy book, and several of them are actually written by spies. Sometimes about themselves. I have a couple of autobiographies, like Kim Philby is one of them, the guy who was the head of the Cambridge Five in Britain, famously infiltrated MI6 and whatever the diplomatic office is called. They came out of Cambridge, became Russian moles, but they were from Britain, and they were moles for Russia, and they infiltrated from the 30s to the 60s. They got found out in the 50s, 60s area, and at least 2 of them fled to Russia and just lived out. And Kim Philby lived the rest of his life out in Russia, and wrote a book whose name I normally remember, but it's fallen out of my head. And then Graham Greene. No, I think maybe he did. Maybe Graham Greene did the intro, but there's another author who. No, maybe I'm wrong. Whoever did the intro, who's again name I can't remember, because of course I'm on video. He wrote a big, thick book, like a humongous book about his time as a spy and other spies and lots of stories. So I'm kind of in the beginning of that one, so I don't really have much, many stories from that. But again, like I said, the favorite thing I have in my head right now is about the horse trivia book. Here's I'll just say it. There's, because I was an English major. I love linguistics. I did a bunch of linguistics classes, so I'm always looking up the etymology of things. And while I was researching the horse trivia book, I was looking into the etymology of a lot of horse terms. But then I ran across one that I didn't think was a horse term. I have to set it up. Jousting. The medieval sport of, running at 2 knights running at each other with lances in their hands, trying to knock each other off the horse. And then also, later they started using rings where they're using the lances to hook some rings, a little less dangerous, at least, because the knights were actually soldiers and they had to fight in battle. So if they grievously injure each other while they're fighting each other, then they won't be able to fight other people. So most of the time, the nobles, the lords, I'll use the terms interchangeably, had a cadre of their own knights who they would put up in these competitions, and they would also send them off to war because, again, they were soldiers. But they would put their own knights up against the knights of other nobles, and they'd fight it out for who was the best. Whoever won got all the kudos. But there were also roving bands of, I don't mean to say roving, but there were bands. There were some sort of mercenary type knights who could be hired by the nobles. They didn't work for any one particular noble, so they could be brought in for battle, or they could be brought in to stand in for that noble at a jousting competition. And those knights were known as freelancers, and that's where we get the term freelancer. And I thought that was really cool. I never knew that before before the research. I always learned something neat during every book. I mean, of course, lots of things, but there's always something that sticks with me. There's like one thing that sticks with me from every single thing I work on. Trying to do some screenwriting right now. I'm writing a short horror comedy at the moment, and I'm trying to kind of push myself into more screenwriting stuff. So that'll be my next, I don't know if you can see, you probably can't see the card very well, but yes, I'm at BernieJohnson.com. It's BERNI without an E at the end. And people can, find my work there, join my mailing list, see my ramblings. I put the freelancer story up there. So, because again, that was my favorite thing. So I put it on all my social media plus my blog. And so anything new I'm working on, I'll post something about it eventually. And that's a good way to keep up with me. I have an author's page on Facebook that I look at occasionally. I think it's, Bernie Johnson Writer, but I'm also more active on Twitter on BERNIJ, my Bernie plus J. I'm pretty active, mostly posting like political stuff. So if you don't want to know my politics, don't look at my Twitter page, but but also posting about writing.
Hello, Dragon Con. I am Leanna Renee Heber, and I love you all. I love attending Dragon Con, and I love the track directors. I particularly love the alternate history track. After many years of working on a whole lot of gas lamp fantasy, that's a fancy industry term for historical fantasy set in the gas-lit era, so the 19th century, with a lot of atmosphere, and for me, a lot of ghosts. I've spent a career of 16 some books talking about historical ghosts in my fiction, and I'm very excited that this fall I have my first nonfiction coming out. It's called A Haunted History of Invisible Women, True Stories of America's Ghosts, and it's co-authored by founder of Burrows of the Dead, which is New York City's premier and best reviewed ghost tour company, Andrea Janes. She and I teamed up. I am a tour guide for Burrows of the Dead, and we have a lot of experience, not only with history as New York City tour guides, but also with a lot of ghosts. So I'm merging all of my favorite loves, whether it's fictional ghosts or in this case, real life ghosts that are focusing on women's history. And that ties back into the things that I love to do for Dragon Con, which is talking about history in general and specifically important women in history. So you'll definitely see me at a bunch of Dragon Con panels. I'm very excited. I do know some of the things that we've been talking about. We're definitely going to be talking about important people in history and also how people like us as authors and creative professionals can be bringing that history to life in new ways in our modern era. Certainly be talking about Victorian death customs. That's always our favorite. So you'll definitely see me in, my all black regalia. If you ever see me wearing color, you know that something is wrong. That would be like a cry for help. So I wonder if I'm feeling all right. So yes, you'll see me, the woman in black, always in my Victorian regalia, excited to tell you about various interesting 19th century customs. A lot of that history and a lot of the interesting ways that we have thought about ghosts and spirits and stereotypes throughout history involving women, involving their ghost stories, involving their history. A lot of those things thematically fit right into the book that I'll be releasing in the fall. So it's up for pre-order now. You can find it wherever books are sold. It'll be out digital, trade paperback, as well as an audiobook. And we really hope it does well, because we would love to do a second volume, because there's so many wonderful, incredible ghost stories out there, specifically women's ghost stories. We're focusing on women because we're interested in unpacking some of the stereotypes, the tropes, the misapprehensions that haunted these women when they were alive, let alone into their ghost stories after they've passed. So we're really interested in unpacking some of those things and having a discussion throughout the book about some of the things that women have faced through time and are still facing, and the things that we're still fighting for collectively. So with all of this, it's going to be a fun way to talk with all of you, our beloved DragonCon audience. I love having a back and forth with the readers, with attendees, and I'm looking forward to seeing how these kinds of conversations that we have in our panel rooms can then extend throughout the year. Please find me on social media as well. My Twitter handle is @Leanna Renee, LeannaRenee. I'm on Instagram at my full name, Leanna Renee Heber. I am sometimes on Facebook, but I'm more often on Twitter and on Instagram. I also have a YouTube channel, /LR Heber. And I also really just love hearing from readers. You can go to my website, leannareneeheber.com, and you can find free reads there. You can also find a contact page there. You can find some advice about writing. So aspiring writers, please check out my free reads page, and you'll find So You Want to Be a Writer, which is a link to everything that was helpful to me when I was first starting out as a writer. And I like to share that with folks. You can find the contact to send me an email that way. I do love hearing from folks, and I'm really excited to see everybody at DragonCon. If you're curious about some of the fiction that I've been doing for the past, over a decade, my most recent series is called the Spectral City series, and that follows a group of psychic mediums and their favorite friendly ghosts that are solving crime in 1899 Manhattan. And as a New York City tour guide, I love taking my readers, walking them through the streets of historic New York, and trying to bring that history very alive for us here in the modern era. That's kind of what this whole track is about, and that's definitely what I love bringing together at DragonCon, a love and a passion for history into our modern era, and learning something new about it as we celebrate what's up ahead in the future. I thank all of you for tuning in. I thank all of you for being a part of our family, and I will see you in Atlanta.
Wow, I get to talk about myself? This is unusual. I'm going to feel like I'm on a job interview or something. Hi, everybody. I'm Mel Todd. I am a best-selling author on Amazon. I have over 30 novels out. I'm pushing 2 million words. I think the next novel I put out will push me over 2 million words. And basically, I like telling stories. So one of the questions I get asked a lot is, why don't your stories have romance subplots and stuff? And it's one of those too long didn't read answers. But one, I think you can write a really good story without a romance subplot. I also think that you can have other relationships that drive the story forward as much, if not better, than, oh, I want to get with the cute, sexy person over there. And it's a lot of fun to get to play with that. The other reason is back in 2016, my husband was killed in a car accident. And after that, I just went, I'm done. I don't want to write happy ever afters. There's way too much work. But it lets me tell some of the most fascinating stories where you have best friends, you have friends, you have parents, you have siblings, you have all of these super powerful relationships around you that drive a lot of what we do every day. So the series that's the most popular right now is my Twisted Luck series. And it is about a young woman who is absolutely positive she is not a mage until she finds out she's a mage. And her desire to just live her own life without the government, people or beings from other realms, anything else driving her life is what drives the entire series. She wants to be in control of her own life, and it's the one thing she's not in control of. People, beings, government agencies are pulling her one direction, then the other direction, and she is constantly trying to reassess and refine her stability to keep going. And so it's called the Twisted Left series. The main character starts out at 19, and I'm working on the last two novels now. She's going to be in her late 30s at the last novel. I can't tell you the exact age because I have to double check my timeline again because it's a complicated timeline. And I keep forgetting how old she is because, well, I forget how old I am. So why should I remember how old my characters are? And it's just fun. I have some of the best covers. As the best cover artist, I have characters that have grabbed people's imagination. I have a gorgon. I have her familiar is a calf. Think if you know what a caracal is, it's a type of cat that has red fur and really pointy, tufted ears. And the caracal on Earth only has like a tail that's like about a quarter of its body length, which just makes it look funny to me. Yeah, my cat has a really long, almost prehensile tail that he uses to great effect, as well as constantly commenting about the fact that he's really sure human has to taste good. If it doesn't, that's what hot sauce is for. You know, I have to admit I agree with the hot sauce comment. I have never eaten long pork, so I can't answer whether or not that solves everything. Other than that, I have a completed series called the Cayley Chronicles, which is my takeoff of Shifters. So I love werewolf, cat shifters, thundercats. I've always loved them. I've been a longtime gamer, and White Wolf with Werewolf Apocalypse was one of my favorite tabletops. However, I am so very, 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 very tired of the hiding in the shadows, the fated mate, the either harem or reverse harem. It just kind of bored me. And I want what would happen if everybody knew there were shifters and there was absolutely no way to hide it. Well, how do I do that? And that tends to be how I write. I come up with the story and then I go, okay, well, how could this happen? Okay, then how could that happen? Then how could that happen? So the series is called the Cayley Chronicles, and it is based off of the idea that, though you don't find this out until like book 4 or 5, so sorry if I'm spoiling that for you, that Earth gets hit with a ton of nanobots. And if you don't know what nanobots are, think super intelligent, teeny tiny computers, like the size of a virus, tiny. That's how small these computers are. And by the way, we haven't quite reached that stage yet. At least if we have, I'm not saying, and I know nothing. But they hit Earth and they infect basically 2% of the world's population. And I'm like, okay, yeah, 2%. But if you think about that, and when I was writing the story, we were still closer to 7 than we are at 8 right now. But 2% of the world's population is 140 million people. That's a lot of people. And it's enough people that you can't silence them. And they all change into animals. And it's glorious because I play with it. So what happens if all of a sudden that this means literally 2 out of every 100 people you know is now an animal? They can shift back and forth. Some of them are cougars, some of them are bears, some of them are wolverines, wolves. I did keep it all predators for story reasons, but I also made it science-based because I didn't want to do magic. So they have to fuel the change, which means you're burning through 5,000 calories a pop every single time you change, which means shifters eat a lot. Well, so you start having shifter restaurants open. You start having people that cater specifically to shifter taste. You start having social media that's strictly for shifters. You have scams that are based off of shifters. And it was a lot of fun. I wrapped up the series a little bit easier than what I might have wanted to, but it's one of those things where the life of an author is the fact that if your books aren't selling, you're going to go write something else. So I wrapped up the series. It's good grief. There's 7 full novels at 100,000 words. There's 700,000 words, and then there's 4 novellas at about 30,000 words. So it's almost 1 million words just in itself. So I don't write short books. Other than that, I have so much stuff to do. If you see all of these boxes behind me, here, I will show you the boxes. They are breeding. boxes breed at my house. Those boxes, however, are all the books that I need for Dragon Con. So that's all the books I'm going to be selling. That's going to be stuff that I'm taking because I have a booth at Dragon Con this year. One of my good friends, Robert Ross, has a booth, and he asked if I'd like to share it with him and Jenny Koch. And so all of us are going to Dragon Con, which means that I will have lots and lots of books at Dragon Con. So please come buy them because Lord knows it's gonna kill me to pack them in. I don't want to pack them out. Other than that, I am somebody who just loves to tell stories. I like doing twisted things, which is why the series tends to be called Twisted Luck. But I have lots of various stories out there, both in the Cayley Chronicles and the Twisted Luck series. I'm in 4 or 5 anthologies. I keep forgetting how many I'm in because I just submit them and then ignore it. And then, believe it or not, I'm a fanfic writer. And I still love my fanfic. Someday I might give it up, but it's probably not going to be any day soon. So if you are a Xander fan from Buffy, come look up my stuff because you'll love it. I write under Nye Corson for fanfic, and it's still the most fun I've ever had. I need to go back and write some more on it. In fact, I've had a few people poking me going, can we have another chapter, please? And I need to get my butt in gear and go do that. If you like stories and you decide that you've fallen in love with my voice, and for those of you watching it, you're like, okay, what's a voice? Because my voice is horrible. You know this. But voice is how you tell stories, how you tell and how your characters speak, how your narration speaks. This is what voice is. And my voice tends to be relatively consistent. I can change it sometimes. If you ever find my old romance stuff, which is under Renee Levins before my husband was killed, that voice is much different than this voice. And then I have a series called the Blood War series that I co-write with an author, Doug Burby, and he's a former military. He retired as a lieutenant colonel. I purposely changed my voice for those stories because my voice wouldn't fit. I need to tell a story that matches how he talks because it's really his world and his story. So my voice is much brisker. It is more direct. It doesn't have as many flowery words as I sometimes tend to use. I am an absolute queen is using a 3-syllable word when I could use a 1-syllable one, but who wants to walk down the street when you could traipse? I mean, words are fun. The other thing you can always do is sign up for my newsletter. So I have a newsletter that goes out every other week. I send it out on Sundays, and usually it's pretty straightforward. It tells you what's going on in my life, my trials and tribulations, of which, I have way too much stuff going on. And if it can go wrong in my life, it does go wrong, usually to hilarious effect. Then I usually recommend some books, let you know about somebody who's either got a reader magnet or a book on sale. And then at the end of every story or every newsletter, I have what I call my micro shorts. Now, my micro shorts are a blast. I have a lot of pictures that I've bought over the years, and I basically shuffle through all of them, and I grab a picture, and I write a micro short story based on that picture. So it could be of a tree. It could be of a portal. It could be of a spaceship. It could be of a monster. I write a micro short story, usually about 250 to 350 words, based off of that image. Sometimes they're horror. Sometimes they're romance. Sometimes they're inspirational. Sometimes they're just weird. And I love all of them. There are so many story ideas that I've come up with doing this that I could write entire series. One of the last ones I did has a runic sword. I'm going, there's so much stuff that I could do with a runic sword in a space setting. It's like the character walks into the cantina in Star Wars and they have a runic sword. Coming up with story ideas is never an issue. Coming up with time to write the story ideas is something else. So the other thing that I'm working very, very hard towards is assuming the world doesn't end. If it does, I'm prepared. Just saying, I've got this covered. But assuming the world doesn't end, I'm planning on quitting my day job next year and writing full time. If I can do that, that painting right there, I love that painting. It is a painting by Galen Dara, and it has called to me since the moment I saw it at Multiverse in good Lord, what year is this? 2021. It's been a year. I want to write a novel based off of that painting. I've got the plot all figured out. I know everything that's going to go on in it, and I cannot wait to write this epic fantasy, because that is absolutely what it is. And it's one of those where I wish it was on the screen so I could zoom in and show you. But she's got tattoos running down her arms. She has lion shifters. She's got magical tools. I cannot wait. I want to write this story. Other than that, if you look for all of my stuff is written under Badash Publishing, and Badash Publishing is based off of my husband, whose name was Ash or Ashley. And the running joke always was good Ash, bad Ash, I'm the one with the gun, which if you're an Evil Dead fan, you know exactly what I'm talking about. But it's called Badash Publishing, and I have all of my books up under there. And hopefully in the next year or so, given that whole day job, non-world ending, minor things, I will probably be publishing other people's stuff just to share stories. I mean, we all talk about how long it takes to write a book, and it does. It takes a decent amount of time to write a book, but I can never, ever write as fast as people read. I can't write as fast as I read. And I know that there's no way to ever provide more stories than what people are out there that want to read. All I can do is hope that people find them, which gets harder and harder. But at the same time, there's so many fascinating things out there that sometimes the search is half the fun. I mean, it's frustrating to get a story that you don't like, and there's some people who don't like my stories, and that's fine. So I will tell you the great horrible secret about me. I hate avocados. Absolutely, can't stand them. I'll cook with them because my mom and my other roommates like avocados. I hate avocados. If you don't like a story, that's fine, because I don't like avocados. It doesn't cast any bad attention on me. It just means that I didn't like the story. And everybody is perfectly welcome to not like avocados or stories. And I hope you do like my stories. But if you don't, I can probably recommend somebody you would like. So Robert Ross writes a fascinating fantasy series called The Sentinels of Creation. I've got Jenny Koch, who writes sci-fi. She writes humor. She writes horror. All of these things. I have Patricia Briggs, who I adore. Alana Andrews. Go read. I mean, there are so many stories out there that I really, my daydream, I did not win the lottery the other night. So for those of you who will be watching this in the future, the lottery was $1.28 billion. I did not win. So that means I cannot kick back on an island with a cabana boy bringing me daiquiris and read nonstop. But it does mean I'll probably keep writing stories. I'd win $1.828 billion. That might have been pushing it because I could be traveling. So I guess I'll keep writing. So I for your hopes, I hope I don't win the lottery, because that means I'll write stories. Because if I did win the lottery, I'd probably take a really long vacation and then maybe fly to the moon. Other than that, I mean, come find me. I'm on Facebook. I have a Facebook group called Twisted Luck. I have my Badash Publishing group, and then there's the Mel Todd Author Facebook page. I do have an Instagram and Twitter account. Basically, if you look for Badash Books, you're going to find my stuff. So everything else, people will be watching this while I'm at DragonCon. Well, I will tell you that I will be really busy. They've not turned out the final schedules yet, but let's just say I'm not going to have a lot of downtime. But when I do have downtime, I will either A, be in my room hiding, because I am an introvert. And as much as I love DragonCon, it flat out exhausts me really fast. So I'll be in my room going, breathe, breathe, breathe. This is totally valid by the way. If you need to do it, do it. Or I'm going to be at the booth. So, as I said, I'm sharing a booth with Robert Ross and Jenny Koch. If I remember my information correctly, and I'm not going to go pull up my email to verify because I'm old, memory disappearing. It should be on the first floor of the Americas Mart, which means we have absolutely prime territory for you to come find us. We will have books, we will have bags, I will have temporary tattoos, I will even have free audiobooks and free ebooks. If you come in and smile at me nicely or even beg, those are all there too. Otherwise, all I can say is I hope everybody enjoys DragonCon because I know it is an absolute blast and I am so excited to be an attending professional this year. And all I can do is show up and try my best to keep everybody entertained and not go insane.
Hi, I'm Bill Fawcett. Worked for DragonCon, write, used to design games, package books, worked with publishers, done a lot of things. I think the best way to describe me and my career is I can't hold the job, which is really kind of pitiful since I've been my own boss since 1980. Back in 1980, I was working with a bunch of guys in Lake Geneva on this role play game, and we've been playing since '74. And I was working full time to make money because you could make a living in gaming back then as an insurance executive type. I got to tell you, and no offense to any of you out there from the industry, it's not really an exciting career option when you're in your 20s. It did not, or 30s. It did not look like something I'd want to grow into for the next 50 years. And so it came the opportunity. I dropped it to stop writing at TSR for Dragon Magazine and other elements and books, and began working as a co-founder of Mayfair Games. That got me into the book industry when I became the liaison to Berkeley. And that's kind of how I ended up writing my first book. An editor named Susan Allison. In honesty in publishing, I was dating an assistant editor and she wanted her to work that weekend. So she gave me a book. And back in the early 80s, mid 80s, anything with an elf or unicorn in it got printed because there just wasn't enough fantasy out there and Tolkien had taken off. So I came back in and the book was bad. It was horrible. Just not well written. I brought it in on Monday and I said the exact wrong thing to Susan. I said, Susan, this book's so bad. I've been writing game stuff for 5 years and I could do a better job. And she handed me a 2-book contract she already had printed out. And that's how I began writing, which I did through the 80s and some of the 90s, and I'd begun again. In the middle of that time, I worked together as what's basically a glorified editor and concept person called a packager for publishers. And we put together about 400 books with various authors, and I worked on them sort of as an independent editor in some ways, or did a few more functions. But it taught me a lot about the industry, and so now I'm back to writing. I've just finished a book, which I turned into the Elgin Press to Chris Kennedy. It's called Never Again, and it's very much a modern view of things. I love military history. I've written a lot of military books. I did back and did a series called The Fleet with David Drake. I've put together some other things. And this is a book about the Kurds, who are probably the most abused people in the world. There are more Kurds than there are Iraqis, but they don't have their own country. Their country, because the British didn't like them or care about them at least, is split between 5 different other nations, including Syria, Kurdistan, Iraq, Iran, and they're normally a pretty picked on minority. In fact, the Kurds activist group are the ones that Erdogan in Turkey was holding Finland as a member of NATO back on because they want to split with him. In fact, control part of Syria at this point. Well, the idea is that they get their act together as a country, but they're put on from all sides, sort of Islamic Israel in a way. And they find one advantage. They have a Musk type character, and he comes up with a power suit. Well, actually, the power suits are there. Even DARPA, our group has worked on this. The problem is the extension cords aren't long enough. And that's not sarcasm. That's the batteries are bad. We can't get enough power for long enough to power a. It's like minutes, bare hours, and now use in combat. So the only science fiction element in the book predicates on a good battery, the next generation. We haven't had a change since lithium, and that's almost 20 years ago. I mean, if computers had moved at the same speed as batteries, we'd just be getting Pong now, basically. It's amazingly unchanged, the technology. So, but with that, they can basically have the light cavalry of the day. And as we're seeing today, aircraft and tanks are a lot more vulnerable than they used to be. So something that's fast and can move with a lot of ammunition and a man in it, it has an advantage. So Never Again is basically a story of revenge. That's why I say it's modern. Man loses his family and decides he's going to defend his country, and the best way to do it is to conquer everything around it. And it's the first of a series on the modern recreation of the Mongol Empire. So that's what I'm writing. Probably part of why I'm here too is I've been working with Dragon Con for a long time. Thought I would share a few of the fun memories of the people and things we've done, and some of the craziness that I've seen over the years. I was liaison for a number of people here, celebrities who came in, and Alice Cooper was one of them. Thought to be crazy. I was braced for anything with him. I mean, sort of looks like a hard metal Weird Al Yankovic. And he was really hooked on something. I was right. He had an addiction, golf. He had agreed to come to Dragon Con. He's even appearing in places he wasn't scheduled because we promised him around at an exclusive golf course about an hour south of here that one of our members could arrange, and he loved golf. That and his family. He's the most devoted dad you'll ever see. Not what I expected, but I sure liked him by the end of it. He's a really nice guy, but it came as a surprise. Sometimes the streets around Dragon Con are kind of fun too, kind of different. Sometimes the city interferes and it can be a risk. And sometimes I'm very proud of being part of the fandom of Dragon Con. Little diversion, we're a community. Aren't a lot of cons you go to that you get the feeling of community that Dragon Con gives, and they put together. The Atlanta police love us because we're such a great group to deal with. They have very few problems, and we're sort of self-policing. We get our own drunks back to their rooms. But sometimes there are problems like street people and that. And I remember walking down the street and seeing from a distance a group and later of white, a blur of white against a wall. And I later found out what had happened is one of our fans who was in a cosplay costume, this was probably about a decade ago, was being very hard pushed by a street person who wasn't making a whole lot of sense. And it was right in that stretch between the Hyatt and the Planet Hollywood. And coming out of the Planet Hollywood were about 20 members of the 501st in their white stormtrooper uniforms. And when they saw what was going on, they just sort of formed an arc around the whole situation where we put her against a wall. And then one of them with his mic and his outfit went, "That is not the fan you want," or something to that effect. And this guy turned around and there are 20 stormtroopers watching him. I've never seen anyone move quite that fast, that drunk. And I've seen a lot of drunks. I was a college dean. It was impressive. And I always said, you know, that's us. We're a community, and our science fiction is our biggest asset, along with being that which makes us different. As you can tell from the what used to be gray hair and mostly lacking, I go back, I was born in the 40s. And I remember being a fan in the 50s, and we were treated like a cult. We were considered kind of strange, actually, even by high school teachers and that. And we read and then played games. And when games, Avalon Hill came out and all these games. And this is the buildup that actually makes Dragon Con what it is, because we found each other, and then D&D came out, and they found us. Unfortunate Wisconsin, Michigan, a nut in Illinois making a lot of money, saying he was going to stop us from taking all the children to Satan, etc. And a lot of hard work and a lot of promotion, and Gary having some great ideas, and Jim and other people working with him, having them. And a lot of just creative things, and people noticed, and it began to spread. It began to spread. And not long after that, we have a Dragon Con forming and 1,000 people. And today we have to cap it at tens of thousands, and sometimes. And what happened is, somewhere in the middle, we didn't discover the world discovered us. Those of you who are watching this, we're the us. And every once in a while when I'm giving a speech, I say this, and I say, we all started as nerds and kind of isolates, and media and society and movies found us. So society and us had a little discussion, and we won. I know we won, because we are so pervasive in society, and it hit me hard one time. I was doing a book. I'm a military historian too, as you probably can guess from the topic of that last book I described. And I do a lot of nonfiction, you can look it up, Bill Fawcett, mostly about how mistakes change history and things like that. But this one was an interview for a television program called History of the Navy SEALs, based on some books I did with that packaging I mentioned. And we had a grizzled Master Chief, probably about 50 years old, 30 some years in the Navy, combat, Navy SEAL. We're interviewing each of these people about things that happened. And I'm totally out of my science fiction game persona zone and into the historian zone. And then he's sitting in a chair, and he said, well, I got this Silver Star for this action. And I said, well, what happened in it? The interviewer did. And he answered, well, we came into this village. It was during first storm, and there was a bunch of dunes around it. And as we pulled in, we started taking a lot of fire from top of one of the dunes, not that far away. So we bailed out and rolled behind a stone wall. And the fire got more intense, and we couldn't keep their heads down. And these are his words. And I thought about it and realized we didn't have enough hit points to win this fight. So I called in an airstrike. And I just stopped and went, hit points? We've won. 51-year-old, this is in the 90s, a 51-year-old grizzled Master Chief of the Navy, who's a SEAL, who I'm pretty sure hadn't played D&D, although it's very popular on ships now, is using hit points as a designation of strength. We nerds have won. And that's what I always point out, that we're pretty much wagging the dog now with movies and media and even books. Look at what the bestsellers and most viewed are. So congratulations, all of us. We are the in crowd. Isn't that a strange concept? Anyhow, I look forward to seeing you at Dragon Con, and we'll chat and we'll talk about other things, and we'll be the community that we've become.
All right. Hey, everybody. Hey, everybody there at Dragon Con. Hope you're having a good weekend. Lots of exciting stuff going on. My name is Philip Ligon. I am an author. I write right now primarily steampunk. I also write a little bit of fantasy. I've got a steampunk fantasy series that is currently available. And right now I have the Engine series, the first book being This Strange Engine, which is currently available. The second book, This Mysterious Engine, and the third book, This Deadly Engine. All three are currently available. They are online. If you go to jumpmasterpress.com, that is the publisher of these particular books. Very, very good publisher. Highly recommend them. They have a lot of phenomenal works out there. In fact, I am jumping into one of their books right now, the System Authority Book 1, The Jake Cutter Conspiracy by R. Kyle Hanna. Very good author, very good writer. He's got a Time Assassins series out that I've read. Highly recommend it. Very good stuff. So I do write steampunk, which is a really fun genre to write in. A lot of good possibilities, a lot of fun alternate history, alternate technology kind of things that you can play with. Really fun stories to be told with steampunk. I did have the honor a few years ago of being nominated for a Dragon Award. That was in 2019. I was nominated in the Best Middle Grade or Young Adult category for this particular book called The King's Regret, which is one of the Falcon Bone Chronicles. I did want to thank all of everybody who sent in a nomination for me, everybody who sent in a vote for me. That particular book, it was, and thank you to Dragon Con for hosting that event and for hosting it every year. The Dragon Awards, it was really a great experience to be nominated, to be able to attend, to be able to meet everybody behind the scenes. There is a lot of love that goes into the Dragon Awards, and I highly recommend everybody participate in it, vote in it, check out the books that are nominated. It's they not saying it just because I was nominated, but they always have a phenomenal lineup of nominations and books each and every year. I know the people, the nameless faces behind the scenes, they work very, very hard to make sure that they put together a good list of books that will stand the test of time. So thank you again for everybody who voted for me for that. I didn't win that particular time. Maybe, who knows, maybe there'll be a future Dragon Award opportunity to win, especially as this particular series continues. At the moment, The King's Regret is not available anywhere. I am going with in between publishers at the moment. There's a Jumpmaster Press has picked this series up. The book will be re-released. A new updated version of it will be released soon. And then soon thereafter, books 2 and 3 of this particular series will be out, and super excited about the series. It follows a family who they have been attacked by the king. The dad is the lord of a province. He got sideways with the king for various reasons. Won't go into it. You have to read to find out what happened there. And the king attacked their city and their people just out of the blue, sudden attack. So his family fled, and what people could get out of the city, they fled as well, and they fled to floating mountains, which are in part of their province. And those floating mountains are where pirates used to live, airship kind of pirates. And when the pirates left, they left everything behind. So the refugees are trying to stay one step ahead of the king, and they are living in the floating mountains. And the series focuses really on the son and the daughter a little bit, but mostly the son. He's the main character. So it's a story about how they're trying to survive, how they're trying to stay one step ahead of the king, how they are trying to keep their people going. and it's going in some fun directions. It's a really fun stories that I'm enjoying writing them. I hope as people check them out, as people read them, that they enjoy them as well. Something else I will say, another book that I'm reading is In the Shadow of a Valiant Moon, which is the follow-up to another Dragon Award nominated book by Stu Jones and Garrett Worthington. The first book that was nominated, it was very good. I'm enjoying this one so far. It's a good read. Something else that I found recently, just perusing one of those things that you do when you peruse Amazon, and I saw this and I had to pick it up because I enjoy Legos. I enjoy building Legos, and I've watched Lego Masters, which is a fun show to watch. And so when I saw this book, I thought, well, I have to have this book. I've got to get it and see what it's all about. And it's actually you can see the picture, steampunk Lego book. So this is a book that's been put together with all kinds of steampunk Lego creations, and there are some pretty amazing ones in there. So that kind of feeds my steampunk need and seeing what other people are doing. Now, outside of my own work and with the Falcon Bone Chronicles continuing, I am working on a new series that is not a steampunk series. It's actually going to be a time travel series. And I have recently wrapped up the first draft of the first book, which, as writers know, first drafts, that just means there's a whole lot more work to come. But one thing that I have had to do as part of this is do some research, and just to give everybody an idea, you can see the title there. That says Savannah, the history of her people since 1733. So I'm digging into some Savannah, Georgia history because the book has a big setting in Savannah. So that's been a lot of fun. One of the fun things about writing things like steampunk, time travel, is doing the research and looking into different time periods and how people were, what the styles were, what the language was like, what clothes they wore, what kind of lifestyle they had. It's fascinating and interesting. So that's a new series that will be coming out sometime in the future. So lots of things going on the writing front. Writing is a whole lot of fun. I hope everybody is checking out the writers panels going on all weekend. There are a lot going on, a lot of writers here, a lot of really good information, a lot of really neat people, really fun people to meet, a lot of great opportunities. Dragon Con weekend is always a great weekend. It's always a lot of fun, and it's so much fun it's almost overwhelming, but that's okay because it only comes around kind of like Christmas. It only happens once a year. So I hope everybody's enjoying their weekend. I hope everybody's enjoying and taking advantage of the panels and meeting guests and meeting writers and authors and artists and creators and actors and listening to some great music and just playing games, going to the vendors hall, doing all these great things. It's a lot of fun, and I hope I'll see everybody on any of the panels that I'm on this weekend. And if you come to my panels, come up, say hello afterwards. I'd love to meet you, love to talk to you, love to get to know you, find out what kind of things you enjoy reading. And I hope everybody has a great weekend.
Hello, Dragon Con attendees. I've been told we're to imagine we're having coffee together. I'm having a Pepsi Zero Sugar, as it happens, in my basement. Hey, fun fact about my basement. If you know the name Stephen R. Covey, like 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, yeah, super famous self-improvement books, sold approximately 1 bazillion copies in way back in the 20th century. Here's a fun piece of trivia. This is my office. My wife Emily and I own this house. This house was originally built by Sandra and Stephen R. Covey in 1958. This office was Stephen's office. It has never been remodeled. This right there. I know this is not what you were expecting out of this interview, but this right here is the wood panels that Stephen R. Covey put in his office during the Cold War, and that is his green shag carpet. So as we're talking, if you see the ghost of a bald man walking back and forth behind me, cracking his knuckles and muttering, "Is it 6 habits or 7? I'm not sure about this whole sharpen the saw thing." That's just Stephen Covey. So that's just trivia. I'm Dave Butler, and I'm so excited to come to DragonCon again. Not only am I excited, my kids are excited. I'm bringing my 2 daughters for the first time. So I hope you'll come find me at DragonCon. I will almost certainly be hanging out with 2 6-foot-tall young Amazons. Specifically, you can find me at Glennis LeBlanc's The Missing Volume, probably at scheduled signing times, and I believe also with the Bard's Tower on and off, probably selling books. Also the Bain Traveling Roadshow, Bain Roadshow and Traveling Prize Patrol is another good place to find me, as well as on the schedule. So let me talk a little bit about kind of who I am and what I do. Let me tell you some sort of non-writing stuff I do. I am a writer. I know, spoiler, that's coming. Other non-writing kind of stuff I do. I'm actually an editor at Bain Books. This is recent. I'm not full-time. I'm a consulting editor, which means various things. The 2 biggest things that it means are that, yes, I do edit books. And also I am one of the interviewers for the Bain Free Radio Hour. If you have not, so I think it's bain.com/podcast, maybe is the URL. If you go to Bain's website and look for the Bain Free Radio Hour. Again, I'm not the main host. David Afsharad introduces every episode, but every episode has an interview, kind of 30 minutes to 50 minutes, and I do about a third of them. So I recently have done interviews with Michael Z. Williamson about the re-release of Target Terror, with Jane Lindskold and David Weber about their 4th it's called A New Clan. There's a kind of prequel series to Honor Harrington, but it's sort of young adult, and it's about humans developing their first relationships or first making contact with the tree cats and realizing they're sentient, if you know that series. And recently, this was very exciting, did a sort of career retrospective interview with Mercedes Lackey and Larry Dixon. That's the kind of thing you can find on the podcast, me talking to Bain authors about their books or careers. Although other fun stuff, I hosted back in January, I was the interviewer. I didn't say very much because these guys could all really talk. We did a thing on UAPs, on the sort of 20 not UFOs, the UAP revelations of recent years, including also we talked about things like Oumuamua with Les Johnson, Travis Taylor, Tim Powers, Tony Weisskopf, and I feel like maybe I'm forgetting one more person. So as an example of like not strictly speaking book related interviews. So that's one thing I do that you're likely to see. I do other things. I have a portfolio of day jobs. I'm a consultant and actually a lawyer and other things. But the thing you're most likely to encounter me at in connection with DragonCon is that I write. My 15th novel came out as of this recording last month, about 6 weeks ago. It's called Abbott in Darkness. If you liked Lost in Space, the whole kind of dynamic of like of a nearish future, hardish science fiction, and a family, like a family having an adventure in space, Abbott in Darkness, it may be up your alley. Check it out from Bain Books. Mostly I write fantasy. I'm going to get the year wrong. It was during COVID. It was probably 2020. My book, Witchy Kingdom, won the Dragon Award in the alternate history category. That's probably my most famous series. Most famous. My least. I don't know, what's the opposite of famous? My least obscure. I almost said infamous. My least infamous. That's not right. I'm an editor. I should know better. My least obscure series won a few awards, several Dragon nominations, and won the Dragon in 2020. It's an epic fantasy series set in an early modern, in an early 19th century America reimagined as a fantasy empire. So other things you might see me doing, music actually for 2020, or was it 2021? 2020, I think. Dragon Con reached out and asked people to record a little video of themselves having sort of sharing thoughts about why they like Dragon Con. And I'll actually come back and do that here in a second. That's a nice way to close. I, though, in true Dave Butler fashion, ignored the instructions I was given and instead wrote and recorded a song called Talking Dragon Con. I don't know if that's still up on the Dragon Con website. It is still up on my, I don't recall, YouTube or Rumble channel. I have them both. I might have to go share that on Twitter now in memory of the good times. I like Dragon Con. I love Dragon Con probably for a lot of the same reasons you love Dragon Con. It's big, it's flashy, it's exciting. It's a wonderful kind of, on the one hand, it's a literary con that's exploded to massive size. And on the other hand, it's also got a kind of that kind of pop culture media thing going on as well, and then it's got its whole own Mardi Gras thing. It's nonstop fun in 90-degree plus heat and humidity, 90% plus humidity. Who doesn't like that? And you get to go to some of my favorite local institutions. I think Pity Pat's Porch might have. I think they're still open. They're renaming. I wonder if it's just Pat's Porch or something. I'm not sure. Fantastic kind of Southern breakfast place. One of the things I sort of especially love about Dragon Con is I've got I'm not sure I know why this is, but I have a disproportionate. I don't live in the South. I never have lived south of the Mason-Dixon line. I live in Utah. And yet I have a shockingly large number of friends in Southern fandom. And I think it may just be that Southern fans are just very hospitable and friendly. Maybe I just believe I have friends. Actually, they're just being nice. But I love getting to see those people hanging out and talking with those writers at the Westin, or going to speakeasy over in the hotel, and there's a great I have a wonderful sense of being in a community, and I guess I got distracted from this. So what I was going to say on the which when I started talking instead about Talking Dragon Con is another place you can find me. Where maybe you can't find every writer, is that I bring a guitar every year. Every year I come resolved to go play multiple nights down in the in the Hanover room down in the basement of the Hilton, right? And the Filkers. And every time I end up going once and playing for I don't play for 2 or 3 hours. I play one song every 40 minutes when it comes around the Bardic Circle to me. You know how those traditions go. But that's another place you can find me. I'd love to actually do a personal concert. I've actually suggested that to Dragon Con in one of my various emails, but I don't know what the schedule is yet. At least I'll be down there one night playing a few songs. So I think that's basically it for me. Thank you all very much. Dragon Con. Actually, you know what? I should say this. I really appreciate all the hard work that Dragon Con staff, volunteers, team members put into this event. There's a lot of work and a lot of thoughtfulness and a lot of care, and sometimes a lot of last minute scrambling that I think doesn't get as rewarded as it should. So to Team Dragon Con, the behind the scenes team, thank you all very much. And to the rest of you who, like me, are attendees, hey, I look forward to seeing you on September 1st.
Hello, DragonCon. My name is Jean Marie Ward, and I write fiction, nonfiction, and everything in between. Today I will be reading from my novella, Siren Bridge, coming this fall from Falstaff Books. Siren Bridge is all about a lady who's no better than she should be, called Oleander Jones. And to give you a little hint of the plot, I'm going to read part of the jacket copy, which says, "There are rules for successful lady adventurers. Oleander Jones knew them all. Never embroil yourself in the affairs of kings. Never offend an asshole with an army. And never, ever confront a monster in its lair. But the ruby heart of Gruand, the most precious of all the Gruand crown jewels, was so big and so sparkly, and the payoff for stealing it was so enormous. She couldn't bear to leave it in the sweaty, grasping paws of the governor of the New Dominion territories another instant. Smashing a whiskey bottle over his skull was simply a bonus. Now she's got a reward bigger on her head, bigger than the Lagressa national debt. The territorial militia, the full detecting might of falchion apprehension services, and every country bumpkin and city lowlife who can read a wanted poster on her tail. And there's only one way to get where she needs to go. Through the killing ground of the biggest, meanest, man-eating avian monster Roach County has ever seen. Dead across Siren Bridge." The bit I'll be reading today is from Chapter 3. You're going to have a little taste of what is said there in the jacket copy, but hopefully not enough to get you bored. "You can't cross the old stone bridge after dark," the bartender warned. "It's haunted by a man-eating siren. No man who's heard a song or seen a face ever lived to tell the tale." Ollie lipped beer studs from the fringe of her fake mustache. In a voice a lot deeper than the one she used in the governor's palace, she asked, "Then how do you know it's a siren, Cleeth?" "Oh, lots of people heard her before they closed the toll house," replied his wife Nell, the tavern cook. "But they were safe inside, and some of them went mad from it just the same. You listen to me, hon. You stay away from that bridge, or they'll be sending you home in a box. That siren's got teeth as big as carving knives and claws as sharp as razors." "That she do," declared a bearded codger, nursing his ale next to the cold hearth. "We all seen the bodies. There weren't nothing but big red holes where their guts used to be." Great. Irresistible monster in front of her, immovable bounty hunter, Too Tall McLan close behind, and only one road where she needed to go. The way her luck was running, the governor wouldn't get the chance to kill her. She'd never make it to Portum. Of all the falchion agents in all the New Dominion territories, McLan would be the one who refused to follow the dogs. Damn his righteous, unbribable, dark brown hide. It was enough to make her glad for the brutal summer heat. Between one threat and the next, she'd been perspiring more than was gentlemanly ever since she'd seen him ride up to the falchion office in Pennyroyal. No point in laying another false trail. If he tracked her to Pennyroyal, he knew where she was going and the way she had to get there. Only one thing could slow him down. Whether the ploy worked would depend entirely on the nature of her host. She deliberately slapped too much money on the bar. The flare of greed in Cleeth's eyes was everything she could have hoped for. "Thanks for the warning. I think I will make an early night of it. You got a spare room?" Did the sun set in the west? Nell volunteered to lead the way, clothes and hair puffing a chalky cloud of flour as she bustled past. Ollie pinched her nose to keep from sneezing and almost stumbled into the print-covered partition separating the tap room from the center hall. Only those weren't prints nailed to the planks. They were wanted posters. The newest one, tacked at eye level for maximum effect, boasted a lurid engraving of her favorite face plastered over the name Olivia Fitzclare, the alias she used in Buxton. The words ranking elf cadre terrorist, wanted dead or alive in caps and oversized red type featured prominently. The reward was even bigger than the red type. For a minute, Ollie couldn't breathe, much less sneeze. "Don't that beat all? A pretty little thing like that shacking up with them no-good terrorists," the codger hooted. Ollie nodded. Her tongue seemed to have followed the sneeze into oblivion. After a few tries, she managed a suitably manly growl. "What did she do?" "Nothing much," Cleves said, making it plain he meant the opposite. "Just stole a weapon of magical destruction called the Jewel of Compulsion from the army in Buxton." "Then she stole a magic sword," Nell chimed in, "and killed all the soldiers who got in her way. But that wasn't all she did." She flapped her forefinger in front of Ollie's mustache. "Oh, no, there was a schoolteacher out for a picnic with her class. That elf cadre witch fell upon them like a catamount. She chopped them into itty-bitty pieces with that devil's sword and burnt them to a crisp." "No. Yes, she stole the jewel and the sword, but the rest of it was preposterous, absurd, not possible. I was in Buxton the day before yesterday." "Then you got out just in time," Nell said. "The nice militiaman who delivered the posters—" "Militia?" Ollie gasped. She may have even squeaked. In her panic, she was certain she heard herself squeak. Nell bristled. "Of course, the militia. Who do you think's going to protect us from all those terrorists? I can't tell you how much safer it makes me feel knowing our boys in green are on the job. They'll have her swinging from a gibbet inside the week." "Drawn and quartered," Cleese interjected. "Get it right, Ma. She's a terrorist. Hanging's too good for the likes of her." Like a fox at the end of the hunt, its head and paws cut for trophies and its body thrown to the dogs. Senses swimming from the remembered smell of gore, Ollie clawed her way back to the present. "If and they catch her," the old coot snickered. "She stole the governor's best horse while she was at it. Oh, what's his name? The big one that won all the country races last year?" "Starking," Ollie ground out. The gentleman gambler she was playing would know that. She had to stay in character. She'd never get out of the room, much less the new Dominion territories, if she didn't stay in character. "That's it. The one with the crown on his forehead," the codger said. Nell clucked. "You all right, Hunt? You're looking kind of green." Ollie shook her head. "I think I know her. At least I'm pretty sure I've seen her." Cleese shot from behind the bar. He planted himself next to his wife, his balding head canted forward like a beer-scented vulture. "Somewhere," Ollie shrugged. Her host's shoulders slumped in matching disappointment. "Can I take this? It might jog my memory." Cleese waved his hand. "Go ahead. I got a whole stack under the bar." "Your taxes at work," Ollie thought grimly as she dragged saddlebags and saddle-sore limbs up the tavern stairs. That lying, cheating, coprophagic cretin. She should have let him die when the saints dropped that broken bottle next to his ear. Sending a bounty hunter or a dozen chasing after was one thing. She expected that. The more money a second-rate aristo like Helford had, the more likely he was to overreact to a little necessary larceny. This terrorism, the militia, dead or alive, on top of everything else. A fresh bubble of panic stole up her throat. She strangled it with a snarl. This means war. The room Nell showed her didn't improve her mood. An entire circus of fleas practiced high jumps on the narrow cot, while the reek rising from the chamber pot underneath suggested the last guest had left a little something of himself behind. The room's only virtue was the grime-caked window overlooking the kitchen roof. "Perfect!" she exclaimed as Nell set her candlestick on the wobbly nightstand. "We'll settle the bill after breakfast, sweetheart. I like my eggs scrambled, my toast burned, and my coffee black as sin." Nell tittered all the way down the stairs. Ollie kept the dim-witted smile on her face until the door was closed and bolted, and the room's lone chair wedged beneath the latch. Balancing her magic carry-all saddlebags on the tilted chair, she swapped her second-hand gentleman's coat, white shirt, string tie, and gambler's hat for a farmer's log loose smock. A dab of cold cream took care of the mustache. She rouged a fake sunburn across the bottom of her face and hid her hair under a shapeless cap. It was a thin disguise, but fast. Speed was all that mattered now. The window stuck at half-mast, but she was skinny. She crossed the roof and dropped softly into the backyard. A fat three-quarter moon lit the way to the road. The hard-packed dirt was relatively free of ruts, speeding her steps. Soon the tiny village surrounding the tavern vanished behind its sheltering trees. Riding would have been faster, but farmhands didn't ride thoroughbreds. She would have been apprehended at first light. Star King would do her more good where he was. If her plan worked, she could always steal another horse. An unnatural twilight hovered over the stream, visible from half a league away. The glow silhouetted the shattered roof lines of the abandoned toll house and posting station. The structures themselves might as well have been painted in pitch. Forget the siren. Siren song had no effect on women, and her fire sword could handle any creature who failed to take the hint. The danger lay in the shattered ruins. They were an ambush waiting to happen. She tucked the front of her smock into her sword belt to get it out of the way. Right hand poised over the hilt, she crept between the derelict buildings. It was hard to say what was louder, the water shushing beneath the bridge or the pounding of her heart. She couldn't trust her other senses either. Even her sense of smell played her false, bewitched by the honey-sweet perfume of light night-blooming flowers. All she could do was keep moving and wait for the proverbial other shoe to drop, probably right on her head. Only it didn't, not even when she paused, dazzled at the shadow's edge. The little piazza in front of the toll house looked like the backdrop to a fairy tale. A rustic stone bridge arched between the banks of tousled grasses and artfully tumbled boulders. Languid mimosa trailed blossom-laden branches into the stream. A mirror moon sailed the inky water, escorted by a fleet of glittering silver wavelets. Hazy lights, like jars filled with fireflies, dotted the bushes and peered from behind the trees. How'd they manage that? One of the stumps of the old toll gate seemed lit from behind. Ollie peered around it. In the dirt lay a feather colored the luminous yellow of a firefly's tail. Ollie wanted to pick it up, but she'd read too many fairy tales to take the bait. When she settled things in Portum, she could return and go feather hunting by the safe light of day. A luminescent feather would come in handy in her line of work, but right now she needed to cross the stream and disappear before some gun-toting moron tried to win the governor's lordly reward. Ollie adjusted the strap of her saddlebags and stepped onto the bridge. A piercing soprano blasted out of nowhere. "Strudel!" What the? Ollie dropped to all fours. The low walls of the bridge didn't offer much cover, but they were better than nothing. "Strudel!" the unseen singer repeated. "Flaking hot!" Ollie checked both banks. Where was the voice coming from? Was it a trick? Part of the attack she'd been expecting? Couldn't be a siren. Yes, the voice was loud enough for a fire alarm, but who'd be dumb enough to follow baked goods to their doom? Besides, there wasn't enough water in the stream to float a rowboat, much less a thin-footed floozy with big tits. "Strudel!" the voice soared. "Strudel!" It yodeled. "Iced on the top! This apple pastry baked by a master would make a faster forsake his diet for good." On the other hand, dessert would be kind of nice about now. Ollie could almost smell the intoxicating aroma of sugar and butter caramelizing in the oven. She knocked the side of her head against the damp stone. What was she thinking? Move! And on the side, ho-hos deep fried, ho-hos deep fried, deep fried. After 2 days in the saddle, her back didn't take kindly to jogging hunched over. Her legs weren't thrilled about it either. "Strudel!" She broke into a run. "Strudel! Flaking hot!" A glowing form swooped down from above. All Ollie saw clearly were the talons, giant meat hooks attached to dark webbed feet as big as dinner plates. But Ollie's reflexes were sharper than any raptor's claws. She rolled under the strike and landed hard, but safe, against the opposite wall. She reached for her bags. Her hand closed on air. She jumped to her feet. Her money, her clothes, her gear, everything she needed for her escape was flying downstream in the clutches of the biggest damn bird she'd ever seen. "My bags!" she shrieked. "Get back here, you overgrown buzzard! Give me back my bags! Drop 'em! Right now!" The radiant bird wobbled as if startled. It hitched its claws and the strap of her bags closer to its belly. It flapped its wings like a pigeon backpedaling from a hawk. Then it shot forward. An instant before it would have slammed into a cascade of rocks, the bird plunged into the stream and vanished, light and all. That's chapter 3 of Siren Bridge, as I said, coming from Falstaff Books this fall. If you like what you've heard, you can't get it yet, but I do have 2 other stories set in the same world. First, The Wizard of Woodrow Park in Clockwork Universe, Steampunk versus Aliens from Zombies Need Brains. The second is The Clockwork Nightingale in Gaslight and Grimm, an anthology of steampunk fairy tales. Mine is actually based on Anderson, because I hate him, published by eSpec Books. Both of them are available wherever Amazon is sold. If you're looking for more of my fiction, you can check out my website, jeanmarieward.com, or my latest short story, Fire Sale, in the Modern Deity's Guide to Surviving Humanity, also from Zombies Need Brains. Thank you, and have a splendid Dragon Con.
Hi, my name is Lisa Manifold, and I'm so excited to be at Dragon Con 2022. With everything that's been going on, it's really great to be able to come back and see all the people that I know and love and the tracks that I know and love. So yay for Dragon Con 2022. I just wanted to talk to you guys today about, it's been a really good week here at the Manifold Homestead because I just finished and turned in the final copy, and I'm now working on all the audio for my series called The Oracle of Winter. This is the first book, just because I like the cover and it's beautiful. It's called Hexes and Hot Flashes. And the last book of the series, called Witchery and Weight Gain, comes out at the end of June. And it's been really exciting because I haven't written a series with 6 books before. So that's been really kind of a journey. And it's exciting. You know, it's exciting to finish it. I've been with this series for almost 2 years now. So it's sad because I love these characters, but at the same time, it's really exciting because now I'm finishing something that I planned on doing. And, you know, we all know, like, you can make plans, but you don't know what's going to happen a couple of years down the road. So it's really exciting that this series is finished. And even though I should be taking a break and just relaxing, I started my new series as soon as I basically closed the book on the old series. And the new series, I don't have any pretty covers to show you because they're still in ebook and digital format, is called Tales of the Midlife Mortician. And it's about a woman who finds herself suddenly single in her 40s, and she inherits a funeral home. And while she's working on like her latest client, magic basically falls into her lap. It actually falls off of the corpse into her lap. So, and that's going to be the story for that series. So it's really exciting because I've been waiting for this series, but you got to finish what you're doing first. So that was it was awesome that I was able to go ahead and get that started, even though I really thought, oh, I'll be finishing the book and I'll be taking a nap. What else is going on? And this summer I have been camping, which is also very exciting. I've started doing camping on my own, and I bought a little camper. And so I live in Colorado. We have wonderful places to camp. I mean, there's a lot of places where you can just pull off the road and camp. Although because I have a healthy fear of bears, I'm not willing to do that. So I have been camping, and so far I have made it through the big national parks in Utah, and I was just recently down at the Great Sand Dunes in Colorado, which was wonderful. And that is where my summer is going. It's basically working and taking time off to try and go camping, and I think that's pretty much it. Oh, I will say one other thing. If you want to record this, like this is because I always try to do a book recommendation, and I forgot about it because I was thinking about camping. I am reading a series right now that it's an alternate history series, which is I love alternate history, and it's alternate Tudor history. So when it looks at Henry VIII's wives, and when Catherine Howard was scheduled to die because she basically got her head cut off for being a teenager. This looks at actually what happened to her. She was spirited away, and there was magic involved. And the whole series, there's I think 4 books in the series now, and the last one's coming out maybe this month or in July. So I will send the link to that because it was such a well done series that not only took what we knew about Catherine Howard and how she died and how she lived, and all the theories around why she died, and it seamlessly integrated them into the plot of this series. It was amazing. It's called The Catherine Howard Conspiracy by Alexandra Walsh. If you're a Tudor fan, this whole series is amazing. It talks about Catherine Howard, Elizabeth Tudor, and Arabella Stewart. And I went and looked up the historical context that they used in the books. And she stuck to a lot of the historical context, which I love. I love AU that brings in actual history.
Aaron, you're in charge here. This is your slot. So I'm going to follow your lead. I'm going to talk when you say, now Dave will say a thing. Now Vanna White will turn the letter.
How's my light? Like I turned on this light, but now I have like this weird hand shadow. It's not so bad now.
It's sinister. I like it.
No, we're just gonna chat about books, about the books we wrote together, that kind of a thing. Like
also the Aaron Michael Ritchie writes, like the Juniper War series, machine guns, post-apocalyptic cattle drive.
Post-apocalyptic, because that's what the Hunger Game need. It needed more cows because then people wouldn't have been hungry.
This is correct. You're just about 6 months ahead of the trend. We're gonna hit like November, and post-apocalyptic cattle drive is gonna go big. Like if the Hunger Games was written by Larry McMurtry.
Dude, that is high praise. Yeah. I mean, super high praise. So let's do quick intros. So I'm Aaron Michael Ritchie. I'm the author of the Juniper Wars. The first book was a Dragon Award finalist. I'm also the author of the Cunning Man series with Dave Butler, this guy. And I'm also co-writing a ridiculously fun kind of Harry Potter Magic Academy called the Shadowcroft Academy for Dungeons, where Guy learns how to become a mushroom dungeon to fight off evil heroes to save the universe. So it's ridiculously fun. So I've been writing like my whole life, love books, love to read, love to write. And yeah. Dave Butler, tell us a little bit about yourself.
I'm Dave Butler. I'm an editor at Bain. I'm also a writer. My 15th novel just came out. I'm very excited. My next project is book 3 in the Cunning Man series. Aaron and I will someday get to write that.
Juarez, man.
That's right. Juarez, the familiar spirit. Curanderismo, Hiram Woolley's mysterious mother, south of the border polygamists. Yes. One of the best and most exciting things I've written is the Hiram Woolley books, so The Cunning Man and The Jupiter Knife, with Aaron Michael Ritchie.
But you're a Dragon Award like nominee for the Witchy Eye series, right?
I won the Dragon Award for Witchy Kingdom Book 3 in an alternate history epic fantasy series. Yep, absolutely.
Yeah, Dragon Award winner. How could I forget?
Dragon Award, yes, correct.
Because I'm burning with jealousy and envy. I must fight the envy.
Aaron, you're so much bigger than I am. It's not even funny.
Oh wait, man.
It's very nice of you to pretend you're envious.
No, totally.
Envy Dave his career of being so high quality and so fixated on beauty and art. He doesn't care whether books sell at all.
Oh, dude, your stuff is like for real. Like, you already talked about the Witchy Eye series, right? Witchy War. You already talked about.
I did a little bit. Yeah, I recorded a different video.
Yeah, that's genius. Just genius work, man. Just genius work. I think about the Native American character in the book too a lot. He's just such a great, funny, like poignant, just such a great character. Just such a great series. So Dave,
this is Aaron Ritchie. This is your time though. There's Dave time. Let's talk about Aaron Ritchie.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was born on a cold September morning. It was snowing in Denver that day. No, man.
You've written a lot of other books, even as Aaron Ritchie, right? I mean, Elizabeth's Midnight, Never Prayer, Along with the Suicide King. Aaron writes young adult. He writes paranormal. He writes post-apocalyptic cattle drive. He writes Dungeon Core, and he has other mysterious projects under different names too.
A little lit RPG.
Some lit RPG.
Yeah, I mean, I got my start kind of writing young adult novels because I was like that trend of kind of like young adult was like going to be the next big thing, and it was like a lot of people did really well. Yeah, but then I've written a bunch of books under some pen names and wrote some romance, and I just like to write books, write books. But this is kind of more of like
highly regarded as well as beloved figures of the Front Range writing scene. So I just recorded like 3 days ago a thing for the Pikes Peak Writers Conference, and like everybody else on the panel, panelists alike, they just could not get enough of Aaron. Aaron was like, Aaron would open his mouth and they would all smile and kind of melt.
No, that was indigestion. That was like some stomach bug going through Colorado. It wasn't like, it's mostly gas. Yeah. But no, so this is kind of more of the alternate history track. I'm a big history fan. I have I double majored in English and history way back in college, and I accidentally became a history major because I accidentally took too many history classes because I found them so interesting. So I was a big fan of history, and world history, like Asian history and African history, and just kind of the world. I find it all super, super fascinating. Humans are super weird.
So this is of a piece. This is adding some nice color to the world tour you and Laura took at one point. But I'm curious, like, what history classes were you taking that led you to accidentally have, like, is there a period you favored or a continent?
I'm kind of a completionist, so I accidentally took this history class from Barbara Maloney, and she was like a consultant and she taught Asian history at Santa Clara University back in the day, and so I took her like feudal Japan history. Then I took her she had kind of like a Chinese history. She had modern Chinese history, so it was really kind of like her classes. I just was like, I'm going to take every class she has because I loved her so much. And I found, kind of like studying different cultures so just immensely fascinating. And then I was like, well, I studied Asian history. Let's do African history. So I had this professor who taught African history using African novels. So we read a bunch of Chinua Achebe, like Things Fall Apart, and just some beautiful novels. And then he would talk about like the colonial African experience and post-colonialism. It's super, super interesting. So I'm a big history guy. Did you study history in college?
So when it came time to think about graduating, I graduated kind of fast. So I spent 2.5 calendar years in college. and the reason is I met Emily. I wanted to get married. That needed to happen fast because she was in law school in a different state. And so I went and I kind of looked at my credits and I said, well, I could get a classics degree. That'd take me a while. I have like, Greek and some stuff, but that's long. I could get an Italian degree, but like Italian, like classics, the basic problem is you have a lot of courses you have to take in sequence. You got to take the 301 and the 302 and then the 4. And so like, it would just take me too long. And I had classes towards philosophy degree. But I had a bunch of classes, and some of these were history, towards a Near Eastern Studies degree. And it turned out that Near Eastern Studies, mostly, though, it was kind of a grab bag of stuff because there was like some anthropology, some history, some language. Most of it was not sequential, so I could jam it all into the same period of time. So the way it worked is if you had 12 credit hours in a semester or more, 12 or more full time, 18 or more, we didn't have internet. We enrolled by phone. You dialed in and you punched in codes on the phone, right? But the phone system wouldn't let you add because it ruled out mistakes. So you go add in person. If you took more than 20 credit hours, you had to petition for their permission to do it.
Yeah.
So my last 2 semesters, I took 23 and a half and then 28 and a half credit hours. And I just piled everything into 2 semesters and graduated in 2.5 years. So
with the Near East,
a bachelor's degree in Near Eastern Studies and a minor in philosophy. So yeah, I'm not a history major, but I did take a lot of kind of like ancient and modern Near Eastern history.
Like what Near Eastern, like Middle Eastern, like Mesopotamia, or?
Well, yeah. See, here's the deal: BYU and in-state rival University of Utah at some point struck a wicked bargain. I don't know why they couldn't just both have the same name for their departments. They didn't want to, so University of Utah called their department Middle East Studies, and BYU was Near Eastern Studies. Is the same thing, right? So it's like the Islamic countries plus Israel basically made up Near Eastern Studies. But also, like, you could study the Umayyad dynasty in Spain and right. Yeah, we called it the Near East, as opposed to, I guess, the Far East. I don't know.
The everyone else calls it Middle East, but which even like I never really understood it because it's like
middle of what?
Middle East. It's like
yeah.
Islamic world is actually probably more like
it is, except then you're like, okay, but what about like the
Northern Africa?
Northern Africa. At the margin, you got kind of funny questions like, what is Islam? Do we count people like the Falashas or the Black African Jews of Ethiopia?
Yeah. Ancient Christians in Ethiopia,
or like
sure.
The Druzes or Zoroastrians. So yeah, but basically it's like the Islamic world and everything kind of around and in it. Yeah, so I did some history there. Now I've been. This is not supposed to be Dave Butler's college. This is supposed to be Aaron Michael Ritchie as a writer.
No, it was a duet. We're like talking Cunning man. We're talking like our.
We hadn't even started talking about that. But you're an old hand at writing alternate history. One of the first stories I was aware of yours was your secret history of the player piano.
Oh yeah, this was back in steampunk. Remember when steampunk was going to be a thing? You can actually get this story. It's the secret history of the player piano as it relates to Jack the Ripper. So it's I always found player piano super strange and just kind of like otherworldly, right? I mean, it's kind of like that ghost, like in your typical like. So in this is, we're gonna get to the Cunning Man eventually. We're gonna have no problem filling a half an hour. No problem with that. No, so in Colorado, we had kind of at Elitch's, there was this ride where you get on this like cart or like this like swinging like a mining cart, and you go through this haunted mine, and they go through a saloon, and they have like the animatronics, and there's like the player piano. playing by itself. And I just like, part of me was like, that is just so weird. And so I did a little studying in the player piano, and then Jack the Ripper. Everyone loves Jack the Ripper and the Whitechapel murders. And so I kind of combined the two, and I didn't know that's one of the ideas of the original player piano before they had kind of like where you would feed different like big like cylinders, is they would have an actual pianist, like a animatronic pianist playing like the actual keys, like this kind of robotic. Yeah, that was kind of what it didn't catch on because it was too expensive. And
I mean, we're talking about 19th century here, right?
Yeah,
like late 1800s. So okay,
yeah,
like in a bordello in a Colorado frontier town.
I think this was like more of like the beta version, like beta typing, like player pianos. So they eventually, I mean, it was easier to just have the piano play without a player, but that was one of the ideas, that they had these like
super creepy fake players.
Yeah, like a big weird mannequin. So yeah, so I kind of took those ideas and put them in. So it's you can get it. It's through Wordfire Press. It's the Best of the Penny Dread Tales by our friend Quincy J. Allen, who put together these steampunk anthologies and local steampunk anthologies. Also on Amazon, if you look me up, I have some I wrote an alternate history story that was super fun about what if it was kind of like, God, I'll have to get the name of that anthology through the magic of the internet. But it was about like, what if the Chinese, so the Chinese did a bunch of exploration, but then they stopped that because of like, there was always this fear of the Mongol horde coming in. So they kind of like, they had this big expansionist like in the 1500s, but then they were worried about like, the Mongol horde. And so they kind of brought it back down. But my story is, what if the Chinese extended, like built a colony in, modern day California, and then started to extend west. And there's this African American mountain man who encounters like the Chinese Empire. It was a super fun story to write.
But a Chinese empire that never turned back on itself.
Yeah, it never turned. So it was really kind of, so you had like the English colony experience, and then you had the Chinese kind of on the same continent. And it appeared it was a magazine called Fiction Veil. And so it didn't last. It lasted somewhat, but so yeah, so that was super. Oh, and I also wrote a story about what if the Lakota Sioux at Wounded Knee had video game weapons. So it was an alternate history where Wounded Knee turned out very differently. So
what do you mean by video game weapons? Like
they had like a BFG from Doom.
Oh,
they had like the gravity gun from Half-Life. They had like ultimate video game weapons. So yeah, it was I like to rewrite history so it's not so tragic and terrible and awful. So that's but Dave,
yeah,
let's talk. So in our time left, let's talk Cunning Man. Let's talk Hiram Woolley. Let's talk. So okay, so a little setup. So Dave and I have been friends for a long time. He's a great writer. I am honored to be working with him. So we were at a writer's retreat, and so we started to talk about American folk magic. That's one of Dave's passions, is American and European folk magic. And we started talking about early Mormonism and their history in American folk magic. And we came up with the idea of Hiram Woolley. So it was a man who used real magic to fight demons and free ghosts and kind of like deal with like, terrible forces of evil in the world. And so we pitched it to Bain. We got a 2-book deal. Dave, why did we set it in the 1930s? Like out of all of the histories we could have done, why did we choose the 1930s?
Well, it's probably more than one reason. I think the 1930s is an iconic era that readers, for right or wrong and for good or ill, believe they know a lot about. They've read Steinbeck, or they've watched Indiana Jones movies, right? And and so there's a lot of mental furniture we can play with in their head, and so that's one reason. Also, the 30s are a very interesting time. It's a time of big transition, of urbanization and industrialization, and a real an unwritten but major change in the Constitution of the United States. The federal government basically the Roosevelt administration invented the administrative state, as the U.S. knows it. All of the alphabet soup agencies, most of which have never gone away. So it's a time of transition between kind of old world, new world. And Hiram is a very one of the things that's interesting about Hiram Woolley, our sugar beet farmer, model AA Ford truck driving farmer wizard. One of the things that's interesting about him is the way he lives in multiple worlds at once. The way he not in like a he travels across lines of existence way, but like in the way that any person might live in more than one world. It felt right. Also, here's another reason. Hiram is a cunning man, which is a real thing. The cunning women and cunning men of England were the white hat village wizards. There's an argument that they're basically what happened when the Reformation got rid of the village priest, actually, because if you were like in say 1300 and you lived in a village in England and you had a problem, right? A problem like you were cursed, something like that, or you had bad health, and you were too far away to go see the doctors or the lawyers or the king's officers who were at London. One of the people you might turn to is your priest, and you turn to him because you believe the priest could do things that would drive out the evil spirit and the murrain in your cattle, right? Help your crops prosper. And so the priest did all kinds of things that today we would describe as magic. And the Reformation, and that was great, right? And people went to the priest and got healed and got blessed and got what they needed. When the Reformation got rid of the priests, it also got rid of this sort of idea that there was someone who could do something that was effective against Satan, right? The holy water, the cross, the prayer to Saint Swithin, these things were effective against Satan. Protestantism said, you must have faith. Well, that's a lot scarier, right?
Yeah.
That's a lot harder than the priest will fix this, right? Ironically, maybe it's harder to have faith when you're being told this will only work if you have faith, whereas
well, you get to do something, right? You get to actually physically do something.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. So there are tangible evidences and you're participating. So the cunning folk, in some sense, replaced the village priest. They were the white hat wizards. Well, you wouldn't say wizard. They knew how to make things work. They knew how to heal. They knew how to find who stole your cow. They knew how to make the girl in one village over fall in love with you. They knew how to make your crops get over the rust blight on them, right? They were benign. They were usually literate. They were artisan class people. They were like a tailor or a gunsmith who also operated as a cunning woman out of her back door, the back door of her shop. And we have written records of them in England right up into, in fact, the 1930s. So, which, by the way, suggests that they're probably still there.
Yeah. No, there are people still practicing magic. Oh, definitely.
including Aaron Michael Ritchie.
I just dug up the evidence, man.
Okay,
it was my wife who cast the spell.
Okay, fair enough. But also it means that probably in the 30s in the US we had the same people doing the same things, right? So also it's pretty awesome to have a hero who is like a balding guy in overalls driving a truck
in his 40s.
Yeah. So for all those reasons, we chose the 1930s.
Well, I was a big fan of like the show Carnival. It was on HBO, and kind of this like, this like Dust Bowl, and it was kind of this we talked about it, it's like a liminal time, right? It really is before the atomic age. It's kind of this, before the American highway system in the 50s. There was still highways though. I was interesting as we wrote the Jupiter Knife, I did some background on Moab, and I was like, well, was there a road between Provo and Moab? And there was paved asphalt. Because there was a push in the late 20s. But Hiram would have been born in like 1893, like without plumbing, without a phone, without a car. I mean, it was in his life, he got a car, indoor toilets, a phone, right? The radio, the movies, right? All of these were like new technology.
Yeah, a mechanized tractor.
Yeah. Right? You're not using like animals.
Right.
So it really was. And like, and it was interesting to choose Utah, and it was fun to write this with Dave, because we were coming up with names of like, Hiram works for the basically his job is he's a beet farmer, but then his avocation. Avocation is your job. Vocation is like your calling, right?
I think it's the other way around.
Is that the other way around?
Yeah.
Anyway, so Hiram does good works for the Mormon Church, helping the poor and being of service. And so I was like, we'll just make up names, and Dave's like, no, we're going to use like the actual names of the bishopric in Provo in the 1930s. So
1935, yeah.
That was super fun.
Yeah, so a little alternate history. The stories for most of the characters, history is just the history as we know it. Franklin Roosevelt is the president in 1935, right? The dollar bill with the all-seeing eye is being introduced for the first time in the year 1935.
There were Snickers bars. Who knew there were Snickers bars?
Snickers bars, yeah. But then there's this inner world where magic works, and Hiram is a wizard. And in fact, book one, The Cunning Man, is basically a book-length wizard's duel between him and a malign sorcerer named
very slow. It's literature's slowest wizard duel.
Correct.
No fireballs. And that was one of our fear when we submitted to Tony Weisskopf. We're like, oh my God, if she asks us to put in fireballs, it's going to be a big rewrite. No, but she didn't. She was on board. So it's all real American folk magic.
Yep. Every act of magic in there is in the historical record or in a book of spells. Yeah.
So we'll include the cover. We'll include links to, because I have like 2 free short stories on the Bain website.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. If you're interested and don't want to commit any money yet, Aaron's written 2 Hiram Woolley stories, which are free.
On the Bain website. We'll include those links. I'll include my Amazon link. So is there anything you want to add? We've been doing this for a half an hour. We could do this for hours. I love you, Dave Butler.
Aaron, so Dragon Con attendees, Aaron hasn't even told the story of the spell he actually cast in real life. So I have like a shelf full of spell books, but one of us has actually cast a spell. It was Aaron.
It was my wife.
You should come to Aaron and say, Aaron, I want to know about this spell that you cast.
It was my wife. It's my wife. Why my wife cast this spell? Well,
someone had to go back into the cover of night and dig the evidence up, it was you, Aaron.
Total. Well, so okay, here's the story real quick. So this goes back to this whole like having faith is hard, but like doing something, it makes you feel like you're doing something. So we were trying to sell my father-in-law's condo and it wasn't selling. So my mom said, hey, all you have to do is bury a statue of St. Joseph upside down, read this prayer, and the house will sell. And so I'm like, Mom, that's magic. I'm writing The Cunning Man, which is just a magic. And she's like, no, it's not magic. It works. And I'm like, and that's what Hiram would say. Hiram was like, I don't cast spells. I just do things that work. So my wife got the statue of St. Joseph, buried it in the ground on the property of the condo. And some people say you have to bury it facing the for sale sign. So this is all very specific, like Cunning Man stuff. So she said the prayer, and lo and behold, boom, offer, boom, we sell it. But then my mom says, hey, I want my St. Joseph statue back. And we're
After
like,
the house is sold.
After the house is sold. And I'm like, well, we can't, I didn't know where it was. And so my wife is like, well, just take Ella, my youngest daughter, with you, and she'll point out where it was. So on midnight, like under the cover of darkness, me and my daughter with a shovel are sneaking into the yard. She's like, it's right there. So I'm digging up the statue, and I'm like, this is a Hiram Woolley. This is from, like, Hiram Woolley solves all these like paranormal mysteries with his son Michael. And here I am digging up a statue of St. Joseph with my daughter. And I'm like, wow. And, I'm getting thin on top. So I'm basically just Hiram Woolley. So yeah, there you have it. So the cutting books are great fun. The Jupiter Knife. So there's 2 books. Me and Dave are going to write a 3rd if all goes well. Fingers crossed. So thank you guys. This has been great. See you at Dragon Con.
Woohoo.
Woohoo.
Hi, I'm Elle Jaji Lamplighter, and I am a writer, an editor, and a writing teacher. And I think I'll talk about those things in reverse order because I get the quick things over first. This spring, I've been teaching a writing class that one of my students asked me to teach, which is just a novel writing class where my job is basically just to encourage the person to keep turning in work. But it's related to a project I have called The Art and Craft of Writing. We, through a crowdfunding, we made both, I have both a book and a series of like 15 videos on writing. And right now they're just in limbo because 2 publishers closed underneath this, the one that sponsored the project and the one that was going to pick it up. So that's in limbo. But if anybody is interested in writing and like doing homeschooling, or you want writing stuff right now, I'm just making it available to people who want it for free for a little while before we figure out what to do with it. So it's there. I also do editing, which is fun and keeps me busy. So this winter, I had the joyful experience of finishing 3 short stories that I had started, some of them as early as 2018. And for some reason, in each case, I had kind of stopped partway through. So the first one was called Who Rules the World, which happens to be the same name as a popular Chinese TV show. And it appears in an anthology that will be out this fall for Halloween called Punching Demons, which is all about people fighting demons and blowing them up. The second one is called The Unexpected Rescue of Siegfried Smith. And it's tied into one of my major editing projects, which is that I'm now editing book 5 and 6 of the Fantastic Schools anthology series. We have Fantastic Schools 1, 2, and 3. We have one called Fantastic Middle Schools for younger readers. The current one is called Fantastic Schools Halls, which is holidays, which is British for vacation. I have still figured out how we're going to explain to our American readers what it's about because the title is so British. And that's where the story that I just finished that takes place on Dartmoor in England. And I had a lot of fun researching that. There's a lovely lady in Dartmoor who does tours. And because of the pandemic, she did them online. So I watched some of these really cool talks about Dartmoor from this person who grew up there in England. That was a lot of fun type of research to do.
But I was really glad to get that short story done because I had actually was going to do it as kind of a lead in for a free giveaway for my newsletter in 2018. I had commissioned a cover for it and it never got finished. So someday I will make it available with the cover once it's, the anthology has been out there for a long time. But I got some cool news about these anthologies just today, which is a friend of mine who's one of the writers, has a friend who's a prison librarian. And the prison librarian said that the prisoners love our Fantastic Schools books. And I thought, well, I could take that as a compliment or not, but I'm just going to go with the good interpretation and think that's kind of cool. So I just thought it was kind of neat that our books, our little stories about magic schools had made it all the way to a prison somewhere where people were, really looking for something they'd rather do than just sit there. But so that was a really fun story to do. I should say the first story, the Who Rules the World, takes place in my Prospero series background, which for anyone who's not familiar with it is amusing modern sequel to The Tempest, where Miranda is still around. They kept their books. They still have magic. And Miranda finds out her dad's missing and she has to go collect the siblings that he's fathered in the 500 years between the end of The Tempest and the modern day and rescue him. And so I've written a bunch of short stories that take place after that. And this one is about her brother Cornelius, who is blind, and what happens to him after the book. He was kind of the worst off at the end of the book. He had died and was going to go to heaven, but his father had a resurrection staff. And he realized that, if he went to heaven, it was like retiring, and he wasn't willing to retire because he felt he had to help the world. So he's not necessarily a good guy either. So it's not like, it was a really hard decision for him to stay. So the result of that is that he's kind of depressed after the end of the books, but he had, this is his story, and I had a good time writing it. I had started this one a long time ago too. I actually started this for an anthology, and I thought I can't put this in that anthology. It's a little too political. It wouldn't be good for them. And then I started for a second anthology, and I was halfway through it, and I realized I got the wrong deadline. The deadline had already passed, so they wouldn't take it. So finally, it's going into Punch and Demons. The third short story was the first time I ever read a short story in years that I didn't have a purpose for. I just wanted to write the backstory of one of the characters in my novel background before I wrote the novel that I'm writing now, which is the other main thing that I am doing at the moment. Sorry. Anyway, so let me back up, say something about the novel and get back to the short story. So the main thing I'm trying to do is write the 6th book in my series, The Books of Unexpected Enlightenment. And I got derailed by the fact my mom died on Easter. We kind of joke to each other, Jesus rose up and he took her with him. And she had been a really big part of our life, and she'd been a really big help with my autistic son. So my life has been a lot busier in the last bit, both between handling her affairs and helping him. So I haven't finished this book that I'm really, really eager to finish. But I needed to know for it certain background details of the life of Zoe Forrest, who's one of the characters in the book. So I decided to write a short story. I thought the short story came out rather well. And again, I had started this short story ages ago, and I had part of it. It's called The Delinquent Life of Zoe Moth, which is a title I just love. And so I wrote the story, and my thought is that sooner or later, I'm going to take all these stories I write in the background. So in my novel, there are a lot of people at the magic school in the novel who came from other worlds, and they've been turned into children. They used to be adults in other places. They've been turned into children, and they've forgotten their memories, and they're living on this world. They were rescued when bad things happened to their worlds. So I have written a number of stories about backgrounds of different characters in the book to kind of help develop them and figure out where they came from. And someday I want to put them together in a collection So I kept this one thinking that way when I put the collection out, there'll be a story in the collection that wasn't available before anywhere else. And it will be like, make it fun for fans. But it was a really fun story to write. Zoe Moth, as she was known at the time, was a dream thief. She snuck into dreamland and stole people's dreams. And she gets to travel around on the World Tree train, which is a train that goes back and forth on the branches of the World Tree from world to world. And it just was a fun story to write because she's kind of a rascally character, and it was a little different than what I normally do. So that was a really enjoyable project. So I got those 3 stories done, and I was very happy I got them done. I could, my mom was still here. I was able to read them to her. My mom was 16 days short of her 89th birthday when she left us, and she was taking ballet classes and hiking to the last minute. So we got, to do a lot with her. But I miss her the most when I finish writing something and I used to read it to her. So they have to just take it out and read it out loud as if she was listening, because you get a lot out of reading your stuff when you read it out loud. You catch all these mistakes you wouldn't catch otherwise, and see when things are not clear. But anyway, so that was background for the novel. The novel is, so the series I'm writing is about a young girl. It's kind of, it's in the magic school background, about a young British girl goes to a magic school in America. And it's Roanoke Academy for the Sorcerous Arts in the Hudson Highlands. It's on the Hudson River right by Storm King Mountain. And this is the end of her freshman year. This is book 6, and book 1 takes the first week, and books 2 through 5 get her through to like middle of February, end of February, February 25th, I think. And so this is God willing, if I can get to all in one book. I'm nearly done, but I still have a lot to fit in. I'm afraid it's going to be too long. This will be the end of her freshman year, and I really want to get on to her sophomore year, where very different, not very different, but kind of harder hitting things happen to her. Some things I've been really waiting for a long time to get to. So this book, she spends about a third of the book at home over spring break in England, and she brings her friend Siegfried Smith, the orphan boy with his pet dragon, home with her. And so I get to do all the little bits of the magic and wonder of Dartmoor, which is this beautiful wild moors with the River Dart going through it. River Dart has myths about how every year she takes a heart. So Rachel and Ziggy get to fight Dart at one point. And it's just been really fun to write. The previous book, book 5, was a little bit darker, a little bit harder on the main character. And so it's really fun. I've been looking forward to this book for a long time because the series is based on a role-playing game. And the role-playing game, a lot of scenes actually come from the emails. I just kind of rewrite them. Some of the dialogue's written by a couple of the other players. And this book has a lot of stuff in it that is not from the game. It's the kind of the follow through for things I established when I made up the background, because the game was in a very different background. So I made up the background and a lot of the specifics about the world, and I entirely made up a new magic system for the books. But there's a lot of things that I set up for the books that are getting resolved in this book. I'm trying to resolve everything. It's like a season end. I'm trying to resolve everything that doesn't need to be a mystery that goes on to the next year. So all sorts of things that came up or threads are being picked up again and hopefully tied off in an elegant manner. And it's really enjoyable. And the only difficult part is I get so little time to write because of all these other projects I just mentioned. But I'm hoping a lot of them are clearing up. I'm almost done with the Fantastic Schools anthologies. They're about to go off to the copy editor. And I only have like 2 weeks left in the writing class. And so I'm hoping I can get the novel finished and get it off, because it's been 2 years. I wasn't able to write during the lockdown because I had family obligations. Everybody was home and everybody needed help. So I'm happy to be back to it, and I really enjoy doing it. And it's just it's a blessing and a joy to have the chance to spin stories like this. And, I'm just hoping it all comes together. So, by the way, I just want to say how sweet this is. I've been going to conventions since the mid 90s. And it's surprising how little opportunity writers have just to talk about what they're doing. Not only is it fun for me to talk about, but I'm often interested in hearing what the other authors are doing. And I often wish there was more panels that really drew out how the author was doing their own work, as opposed to, I mean, the other things are good too, but sometimes I feel like there's more they could say. Like those last two guys, they're so fascinating. Writers are in a strange situation where if they're excited about their work or they want to talk about it, people think they're egotistical. Engineers don't have that problem. Neither do farmers if they want to tell you about cows, but if you want to tell someone about your writing, a lot of times it's, there's no opportunity for writers to do it. And I really appreciate it.
Hi, I'm Bobby Nash. If you've been to Dragon Con anytime, probably in the last 20 some odd years, and you've been through the comic and pop art alley, you've probably seen me, or at least my table. You recognize some of my books behind me here. Dragon Con is my favorite con to do every year. I've been going since 1989. I've only missed 1 year, and that was last year. So since 1989. So it's always good to come back. I was, basically, this is just an opportunity for me to introduce myself, hopefully to some new people, and to say hi to people who have stopped by before. I am looking forward to returning this year with a whole new crop of goodies. A little bit about me. I'm a writer. I write in multiple genres. I do a lot of thrillers, crime fiction, action adventure. I like to kill people in my books. Yes, I've probably killed more people than most, but that's just part of the fun of writing. But I also work in science fiction, fantasy, horror. I write comic books, things of that nature. I've written audio dramas, audio scripts. I've written screenplays, a few local short things that have been produced. So it's a lot of fun. I love writing and being able to play in all the different genres, and scratch a different itch with each kind of thing. With things like if you see over here, these are two of my crime fiction series, the Snow series and the Sheriff Myers series. Evil Ways was a suspense thriller. I really kill a lot of people in that one. The Hunter Houston series, this is the first book. The Molten Menace. That is a spinoff of John Hartness's Bubba the Monster Hunter series. It's about if Bubba is the number 1 monster hunter in the South, Houston is number 2. And Houston is quite happy with being number 2. But when Bubba and his team disappear, Houston finds that he has to step up and take on all of these bigger problems that he used to just sit back and let Bubba handle. And he's not too happy about it, because Houston was quite happy with coasting by on just dealing with the easy problems. So it's a nice, humorous look at horror set here in the South. The first book, The Molten Menace, for those here in the South, familiar with the South, well, there are monsters living inside Stone Mountain, and that's our setup. So there's a lot of fun with playing with different tropes of local area things. Book 2 is out now as well. It's Hunter Houston and the Midnight Man, and I will have both of those at the convention as well. So they're a lot of fun. There will be 4 books in total of that series, and book 3 is with the editor now and publisher. Book 4 is almost finished, so it's been a lot of fun playing in John's sandbox. It's always a fun thrill to play with other people's toys. Probably like most people, I got my first start trying to write by writing a little fan fiction, and I was doing this. I'm a little older, so I was doing this before the internet, but I used to write and draw my own comics with, Superman and Spider-Man and things like that. So we all kind of get our start there playing with other people's toys. So getting to do it professionally has been a lot of fun. So in addition to playing in John's universe with the Bubba universe, I've also been very fortunate to do media tie-ins for a few other things. I've got to write characters like the Green Hornet, Kolchak the Night Stalker, which was a lot of fun. There was a character called the Phoenix who had a short-lived TV show in the 80s. I got to write that character. I have coming up in July, there is a new Zorro anthology that I have a story appearing in. Zorro was a lot of fun. It was another one of those characters from my childhood. I used to watch the TV show as a kid, and same with the Lone Ranger. I wrote a Lone Ranger story for this year. So things like that are a lot of fun. It's a lot of fun playing with those characters that are somebody else's, and getting to tell those stories, especially with characters you grew up watching, is a lot of fun. So that's a big plus. So yeah, so I try to do that whenever I can. It's always fun. I don't have a lot of books within reach. I didn't plan very well. Sorry. I did get to write one. This was a dream gig for me. This is a book called Night Vale: Crisis at the Crossroads of Infinity. I actually won a best novel for 2020 for this in the Pulp Factory Awards. I was very proud of that. Night Vale is a comic book character who first appeared in the 80s when I was in high school. I remember telling a friend of mine when I found her first book, and as we were reading and we would read and swap the books off with each other. And I remember telling a friend of mine that I will write this character one day. Now, I didn't expect it to take 30 years, but it did. But I did get to write the character, and that was a lot of fun. And so that was kind of one of those, dream gigs. And so you find those characters that just stick with you. If I ever get the chance to write the Fantastic Four or Thor, I'll be in, high heaven, but things like that are fun. So I do those. I do a lot of that kind of stuff, writing characters that I don't own. I also do a lot of work with pulp characters. I'm currently in the process of writing a team up that features a lot of old pulp and comic characters for Moonstone. That features Domino Lady, who's a character I've written multiple times, who is a character that appeared in 1936. She only had 6 stories back in the day, and she was a detective, and she was a socialite who her father was murdered, and so she teaches herself how to become a detective, how to solve crimes, and then she puts on this costume, which it's a very slinky like dress, big slit up the side, and she wore a little domino mask and a cloak, and she would write these letters to the bad guys. Her villains were usually mobsters, crooked politicians, dirty cops, things like that. So businessmen, rotten businessmen, all that. We can probably relate to a lot of that. Those type of villains. They seem to be eternal villains. And she would write them these notes on black paper with white ink. And she would write these really just beautiful handwritten notes and send them to the bad guys that basically would say, I know what you did, and here's what I'm going to do to you for it. And so they would be on guard against her, and then she would outsmart them to still take them down. And occasionally would shoot them, not often, but so she is a fun character to write. I've been writing her for quite a number of years, on my own, and sometimes co-writing with Nancy Holder. And we have, I just fell in love with the character the moment I first read her stories. And so I'm doing a new story now with her, teaming up with some other characters like the Phantom Detective and the Woman in Red and Secret Agent X and Golden Amazon and Judgment, who is a new character that the company owns. So stuff like that is fun. I'm doing a lot of stuff in terms of working for publishers, doing their characters or projects for them. I'm doing a series of crime fiction graphic novels that revolve around historical moments. I can't say too much yet because we're still in early days, but that is a lot of fun. There's a lot of research that goes into it. These are more aimed at a younger audience. So we're doing a lot of research on these particular time periods and these natural historical events, and then telling a crime story that connects with those. a fictional crime story that connects with those. So that's a lot of fun too. I'm also working on. I doubt this will be out in time for the convention, but I'm working on a 4-issue miniseries called Shank that has already been picked up to be a TV series that they're going to be filming next year. So I'm writing the comic, which will, I guess, serve as the Bible for the TV plans. So more on that when I have that to talk about. So that stuff, that's kind of the nuts and bolts of the day job, is working for other publishers. But I also do my own stuff. Like I could mention The Snow, The Sheriff Myers, Evil Ways. I have several books that I do through my own imprint, which is called Ben Books. And with Ben Books, I am able to do the stories that I've always wanted to tell. And as much as fun as it is writing other people's characters and writing in these other genres, I love good crime thrillers, good action-packed crime thrillers. And so with my publishing company, that's what I do. And it's a lot of fun, and I have a great time coming up with the plots and getting to know the characters for those. So that's kind of me in a nutshell. In addition to writing, although with the last couple of years, it's been a little lax because of quarantines and shutdowns and things like that. But I also do a little acting on the side. I've appeared in I've done a few speaking roles in some movies and TV. I do a lot of background stuff here in the Atlanta area. Probably the ones I'm most known for is Dumb and Dumber 2, The Following, which was Kevin Bacon's FBI show years ago, where I played an FBI agent on that. And I was in an episode of Doom Patrol. Well, actually, I was in 2 episodes of Doom Patrol, but I really had a big role in one of them where I played a character they called Disco George. I had a large beard at the time, and so they kind of dressed me up in like George R.R. Martin style clothes because they said I kind of resembled him with the big beard. And so I played Disco George because I was in these funky golds and whatnot colors. And it was great. It was great fun. It was a party scene, a big party at the Doom Patrol mansion. And so we partied for days. It's just a real party, and we just had a blast. And so that was a lot of fun. So I do a lot of that, and so I'm always happy to talk about working on set and what it's like to do a lot of that work. So that's me. I could blabber on for an hour, but I think this is probably a good place to end it here. You can find me at bobbynash.com. And my publishing company, Ben Books, is at ben-books.com. I'm all over social media. Please stop by, say hello.
Hi, everybody. My name is Robert W. Ross, and I'm an author and attending pro at DragonCon. Been going to DragonCon for over 10 years now. This would be my 11th year. First as just a fan, and in the last 5 years as an attending pro as I became a full-time author. So I've got 3 different book series in market and a couple of anthologies covering science fiction, fantasy, and most recently paranormal romance. The oldest series, the series that really I started as an author back in 2015, is called Sentinels of Creation. It's a contemporary science fiction series with a lot of alternate history. So for those of you who are seeing this with the alternate history track, kudos to you for having good taste in that wonderful track. And there's a lot of little threads within that series. It's kind of, if you've ever seen Forrest Gump, there's a little bit of things like that where the characters interact with and sometimes change historical events. And it's kind of the story of a heroic journey of a guy named Kellen Thorne and his soul-born lady, Shannon McLeod. And they whisk back and forth through history and historical events, ultimately trying to save the world and the universe. And that's the story of Sentinels of Creation. A few years into that series, when I realized that I actually was going to make a living at this, I realized I needed to have more than one series of market. And that's when I started the second is a near fiction or a near future science fiction series called Paradigm 2045, set in the year 2045. And the artwork behind me is from the third book of that trilogy called Omandi's Demon. The gal on my right, your left, I guess, is Charlotte Omandi. She's a captain of Earth's first starship, and is a really cool lady. And the person to her back to back is her demon, DEMON, but DAEMON. For you technical geeks out there, you'll know what I'm talking about. Everybody else, Google it, DAEMON. So that's Omandi's Demon. The first book is called Trinity's Children, and the second book is called Humanity's Promise. And the whole premise behind Paradigm 45 is in 1945 is when at Trinity we detonated the nuclear bomb. And the premise is that there are others in our galaxy, and they look for when any sentient species splits the atom, because historically any species that splits the atom but that does not develop FTL within 100 years inevitably becomes warlike when they do develop FTL and creates interstellar conflict. So they've decided as a group that any species that splits the atom and does not develop FTL within 100 years is sanitized, as they say, which with a sentient only pathogen designed specifically for that planet, wipes out the sentient life and without destroying the planet, and it gets to start over. So being set in the year 2045, that's the last 6 months of our grace period. And the trilogy kind of sets off the action as we try to demonstrate that we are, in fact, a species that can travel faster than light within 100 years of developing the ability to split the atom. So, that's Paradigm 2045. And then most recently, my foray into paranormal romance is a book that took me 3 years to write because I really didn't want to write it. And it's about triumph from tragedy, and it's kind of a little bit of a movie Ghost, and there's just a really fantastic, I think, love story involved, but really difficult themes for a father to write and a husband. And I put it off as long as I could, and I finally gave in to the splinter in my mind that was driving me mad, hat tip to Morpheus from The Matrix, and wrote it. And it's been really very well received. So, and that's called One Heart That Beats for Two, and it has to do with love and loss and the great gift that is those folks that that give a gift of themselves with transplants. So One Heart That Beats for Two is the most recent book with that's come out. Let's see what else is coming out. So Sentinels of Creation, I mentioned earlier, is the first series. That series wraps up with the 7th book. In fact, it's coming out in audio in 2 weeks from when this is being recorded, so in middle of July. And that series, like all my science fiction and fantasies, is voiced by Nick Podell, who's my really good friend and collaborative partner. For those of you who may not know him, he's also the voice of Name of the Wind and many other fantastic books. I think he's done over 400 now. I think he's one of the best voice actors out there. And again, even more importantly, one of my best friends. So he just finished voicing that this weekend, and it's going off to the publisher and out the door with Paradigm 2045's last book coming out right around DragonCon. So with either the week before or the week after DragonCon starts. And then an anthology from Bayonet Books with a number of my fellow DragonCon authors about Santa Claus if he were a special operator, and that's coming out in around Christmas time. And for me, that's my short story, and that's called A Sentinel and Santa, and it's set in the universe of Sentinels of Creation. So that's pretty much it for me and what I have going on. I love coming to DragonCon. I love seeing the fans. I love joining all you guys in the panels and getting a chance to to sign books for people, and I leave some hidden around the con, and then we have a booth in the vendor center, and we'll be seeing people there. So yeah, it's a great fun. It's a great time being on the show. I love being in the fantasy literature panel, and Brit Track and alternate history are three of my favorite tracks, and I love seeing all the fans and supporting people. And this year there's going to be a cosplay contest. I'm super excited about that. A number of my characters are being listed for a contest around cosplay, being sponsored out of fantasy literature. This is one of them, Norisha from Sentinels of Creation. It's called Page to Stage. And so if any of you seeing this video and are cosplayers, check it out. You could win $1,000, which, even in today's economy is still worth something. And I'm pretty excited about that, because one of the most surreal moments for me as kind of a younger author, not of age, I'm old, but a younger author in terms of how many years, I've only been doing it for about 10 years, is seeing the year I saw my first character cosplayed out at Dragon Con. I was so excited about it. I ended up writing and putting it in the next book as some kind of a meta event. So that was really great, and so it would be super exciting to see some more of these characters brought to life in this year's show. So you can find me, Robert W. Ross, all sorts of places. I have a Facebook page at Ross Author, Instagram at Ross_author. I have a Patreon where you can get all sorts of interesting back office type activities and sneak peeks and things like that at Robert W. Ross, my full name, at Patreon. And I have a webpage where you can get all sorts of freebies and free art, and you can also get some signed books there. And that's at my publisher, Spartamac. So SPARTAMAC, Spartamac.com. And you can find me there as well. So look forward to seeing people at the show. Look forward to hearing from you through any of those social channels. And thanks for being interested in alternate history and Dragon Con and my work in general. Thanks so much.